Regional School Board meeting for Thursday, May 16th, 2019. I'd like to take a moment of silence for our troops that put themselves in harm's way. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mrs. Belcher, if you could take the roll call.
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kim Farah. Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah Mockamer.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Kristen Savage. Sue Sherman.
Here.
Silva. Also seated at the board table this evening is the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler. The presence of other district administrators as well as Timberlane Teacher Association officers will be reflected in the meeting minutes.
Okay, if we can move on to our minutes for May 2nd. We have 3 sets.
Motion to approve the minutes of May 2nd.
A second.
Motion has been made and seconded. I'll give everybody a couple more minutes just to finish them up. There's 3 sets. Oh. Is there anything else? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstain? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, and 1 abstention.
Oh, I'm sorry, who abstained?
4.
I did.
Lee.
Thank you, Lee. I missed that.
501 then?
501.
501.
And we have non-public here, sessions 1 and session 2
Thank you.
on reverse side. And they are sealed.
All right, so they're right on the back?
They are. Try not to kill too many trees.
No? Thank you.
Is this one set? Here?
1 and 2, reverse side.
Oh, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve non-public session 1, May 5th, 2019.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. This motion has been made and seconded. Like a minute or so. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Hands, aye. What do you want to do?
Sorry, old habits are hard to get rid of. All those in favor? Okay.
Okay.
All those opposed? All those abstain. So we have 502. And now we'll go over to session 2.
I'll make a motion to approve the non-public session 2 minutes of May 5th, 2019.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Lowe's. And we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Is this date correct?
All the same date.
No, they're not. May 5th is my birthday. We were not here on my birthday. So did you mean May 2nd?
I did.
I would consider that a clerical error and have the record
Want the minutes
reflect
reflect your
it.
birthday?
I'd like the minutes to state that Mrs. Sherman.
Wow,
I'll
about your
correct
birthday?
that.
Happy birthday.
It's
That's it.
Happy belated birthday, Sue.
I only
fixed.
realized that was thinking,
Right.
May 5th. We weren't here then. That was a Sunday.
A correct date on both of them.
Okay. So we had a motion made by Brian, seconded by Sheila. Anybody else need any more time to read them? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstain? 601. Motion passes. Gotta collect them.
Yeah, we just send them back, please, they are sealed.
Just the one set of seats.
Just the one set.
Yeah.
Okay, our next would be our student representative, but I know that Nick is on a field trip, not a field trip, but at another event, and will be joining us later in the meeting. So we'll move on to our next one, which is delegates and individuals. Is there anybody that wishes? Do you have anybody?
We have no one.
Okay,
No one has signed up.
we'll right on to our first article of business, business consultant update. Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening. Great turnout tonight. Very exciting, this business update.
Not fooling ourselves, we know there's got to be something else.
So, I'll provide a brief summary update prepared by Mr. Colby as to where things are. And I think he has an interesting proposal for the board, or an interesting recommendation for the board. So, just by way of update, he's listed what he's been doing. We continue to prepare for year end, start audit preparation, field work, and that. You can go through it. Huh?
Sure. I know we're here a couple months ago, we said we'd come back in May. Given some of the recommendations that we had made previously about a higher level person, Jeff and I we've been brainstorming along with some of this other work, maybe another possibility as well. But as far as the status and current tasks, we're continuing at this point to prepare for year end, with starting audit preparation with the goal of an earlier field work for the audit, with the goal of getting the audit report back sooner this year than we did even last year. We're doing and continuing to monitor the controls over the prior audit findings. I know the board was very concerned when we were here back in March about a recurrence of those, so we're still continuing and working towards that goal of making sure that everything is corrected, but that will be corrected through year end so that there will be no findings. We're also working and evaluating the workflow within the SAU to seek good long-term solutions to obviously prevent those past problems and issues from occurring. And we're still, in the process of evaluating job titles and positions to effectively come up with a plan to transition work assignments, provide for a better flow of operations. as Jeff alluded to, one of the things we had talked about is obviously with the proposal or the thought of a withdrawal from the SAU, it does present a very different dynamic, but also don't want to minimize still, even if that were to happen, the need for additional staff and hours. And so that's where looking at, the current setup the way it is, the other solution that I think, could be thought of is a hiring of a part-time person to handle just grants and food service, which are two very specialized areas. There are a lot of districts that do employ a person or persons just in those areas. And if that is, could be a consideration, it would also free time up in the splitting of other duties, which would then free Jeff's time up to concentrate on other areas, maybe at a higher level. That could be coupled with an ongoing part-time consultant, if you will, at the time, but that with the idea that as we work through that, we could wean those hours off as well. So that's kind of, where we're at this point, and certainly would be glad to answer any questions or if there's anything else, Jeff, that you want to add.
Well, I will say,
John?
I'm sorry. I was reading that.
Okay to
Go ahead,
ask a
Sue.
question now?
Yes.
So, hi Greg, nice to see you. A goal for the audit, what's your date? I mean, I had chosen as chair December 31st, but what are you thinking this year?
I mean, you were talking,
I think last year we engaged Plodzik later in the year, which then made it difficult to get them booked in August. And I think if we can get them booked in August, that fundamentally changes the outcome.
So,
So my goal
end
would,
date?
I think we'd be prepared to get them booked in August. If we can get them booked in August, we would have to check and see if their availability is there, but I mean, November 30th, if that were the case?
yeah, I would like to move it up at least a month.
Okay.
I would say.
So possibly November 30th?
Thanksgiving, yeah, Thanksgiving time.
Okay,
Because
great.
wasn't it like this year that it was like that about late September or October is when they started having the field where they came in? So
Right.
between that time, if we can move that a month ahead of time, the end report should be roughly a month sooner.
That would be the hope, yes. The hope, the goal.
No, I generally I would think 6 months after the closing of the books to have it, which is the end of December, is a sound metric to shoot for. I know a lot of towns do it that way, and a lot of districts do it that way, and it's just key for us to have it on the March ballot, because if we don't get it done by that time, all the reports and so forth, you're talking reports, 2 years in arrears that we have to put in to the annual report.
And, I mean, with the auditing requirements, it is harder for a quicker turnaround because there are so many outside reports that are needed and the like. So it's not just as simple as coming in to do the audit. So, even in a great turnaround is still, like I said, a 6-month turnaround is a good goal, but hopefully we'll make it quicker.
Jen?
Is it at all beneficial to have them looking at continuing that work toward the SAU audit while they're already here, or is that scheduled in silos completely separate?
So in years past, we had done almost all three, if you will, contemporaneously, which means a big team from the firm is out, and, at the end of the day, we can have a lot prepped. It's not really the issue of having the information prepped, it's the questions that they have. And so what we decided to do this year was try it a little differently, and that was to do Timberlane and Timberlane only. And then SAU only, or Hampstead only. And Hampstead and SAU switched around a little bit, but the idea was that when they came out, they were dedicated to that entity, that particular engagement. So it seemed to be a much better process because it was a little bit of a smaller team, but that meant that they had more of my availability on a per-person basis, I guess you could say. So that model seemed to work really, really well
Okay, so that
this year.
was a better model to
Well,
do
this
that.
past year, yeah.
Okay.
It was something new that they had tried, and it really seemed to work, so.
Okay.
Ryan?
I have a question on this his suggested part-time person. So Greg, how many hours have you been working roughly a week down here?
Not as many recently, but, I mean, when I was coming over here, probably 4 to 6 hours a week, back in the fall, when I was doing, more of the catch-up work and the like.
Yeah, so you're thinking, because obviously you have a pretty extensive background, so are you thinking we should be looking for someone like you more permanent, or are we looking for someone
I would,
less?
no, I would, not like me, I would look for somebody that maybe has, a background in accounting and bookkeeping, for the part-time position that could, pick up and learn, the federal, state laws with regards to both food service, because there's a lot of work, in both areas. But more of a part-time position on that unless, it's somebody at my level. Because I think with the shifting of duties with that part-time person, it would also free some time up for Jeff to be able to maybe assume, those higher level things.
Makes sense, yeah.
Kind of an alternative to what, we had talked about before.
I think it makes sense.
Greg, those 4 hours during that peak time, that was focused solely on Timberlane specific functions?
Yes.
I think to the degree that it may not have been, it was really for the purpose of taking a look at workflow and how things move and how things work and understanding the roles of the folks in my department, my group.
Okay.
So I think that the idea is that, someone in a finance director type role would be good, but for now, if you had that bookkeeper at a lower rate to do some of that bookkeeping grunt work and that sort of thing, and then, someone like Greg on for the purpose of being able to be able to work with me on those higher level areas and really but really isolate that work and be able to match up the skill set and the level would probably be the best of both worlds without bringing in anyone like on a full-time basis or, anyone outside in a disproportionate way from, what we're paying to what the work is.
So I guess you're looking at this, Greg, as a proposed solution. So if this board says directs superintendent go for a job description and for a part-time bookkeeper, wouldn't that would I would think slowly phase you out, correct?
And if I'm doing my job correctly, that would be the goal.
Okay.
Seriously, I mean, really,
Yeah,
to provide training and the like to make sure the things are,
Mm-hmm.
the recommendations and the like, yeah, the ultimate goal would be to phase me out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you people will come up with some kind of a salary range here for a part-time bookkeeper?
I don't know, would it be
Well,
more of an SAU?
Don't say it.
Oh,
Timberlane thing.
yeah, no, I know.
that's okay with me.
Timberlane.
It's
I'm with
Timberlane.
it. I personally prefer Timberlane myself, but
Yeah,
I'm speaking
that's
for
up to you
myself.
guys. I mean, that's fine. So we could figure that out and discuss it. I don't.
I don't know what the other,
Well, the point that I was going to bring on up is that, I would think that this would not be a Timberlane decision to put somebody in part-time or full-time or whatever for this particular role. This is an SAU function of a service that they provide this board as well as the Hampstead board as well. This would be showing that there's a deficiency in the actual staffing for this sort of service. And this needs to be addressed at that board because it should be on that side of the fence of the payroll aspect of it, or the funding of that.
I hear you. I guess as I was saying as much as 2 years ago when I sat in that chair, that the bulk of this operation is Timberlane. So I personally would like to see Timberlane covered. So we are set, whether it's 77 or 78% of the bill, but we have clearly that much of the business that goes through here. And I think if you look at you look at the audits, most of the issues were surrounding Timberlane. So I agree with you, it's an SAU function to provide the business operations, but I think Timberlane needs its solution, no matter what happens. I don't care if SAU withdrawal or not. You should have a person, I think. Okay?
I'm somewhat I am in agreement with what Brian is saying. I was gonna, I guess, say the same thing. I was gonna word it a little bit differently, but he put it pretty well, that I understand what you're saying, that Timberlane is basically paying the SAU to provide these services, and you're concerned that if we're seeing deficiencies, that those services aren't being fully provided. But at the end of the day, Timberlane needs, I just feel like I'm almost at a point where if Timberlane needs to do the work, then let's just have Timberlane do the work.
Well-
It just seems cleaner and easier.
No,
Because then we have a Timberlane employee versus an SAU employee.
I agree that the hole in the boat needs to be plugged. The question is where do you do it properly? And I think that it should be done properly at the SAU to do it that way. We hired Mr. Colby here because of all the reasons that I don't think we have to get into, but we couldn't get to the SAU to have that happen in an expedited manner. So we did take the bull by the horns and got this at our own cost as well.
Well, I'm just wondering, with the Superintendent, are there any other, we'll call SAU functions that exist like this where Timberlane has its own staff member?
That's where I was gonna go, is it okay?
Yeah, no, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, and I don't disagree. I think, I'm not gonna state the obvious, in terms of trying to get the two boards to agree on, they don't necessarily agree, and you don't agree, and that's fine. We have, if we're thinking grants and food service, as Mr. Colby has indicated, we have other people in finance that are Timberlane only. They may be in a building, right? Like, for instance, Christy Michaud, she handles grants through Jeff, and we have somebody in Hampstead that handles grants strictly through Jeff. Food service, we have two different food service contracts, so those are separate. So services are somewhat separate, but it would not be that unusual to have a finance person like we have at the high school, because they're not stationed in the SAU. They are Timberlane specific, and they do work specifically on finances. So if you were adding a service that was Timberlane specific, I don't think it would be that unusual, right? I understand what you're saying about SAU services, but all the finance services that Timberlane gets are not SAU services that are provided. Some are Timberlane specific, right? Does everybody follow me what I'm saying?
So what you're saying is, in this specific instance, when we're talking about grants and food services, there would not be an overlap because Timberlane does not share grants and food services with Hampstead.
Correct. We have, that's exactly, that would be the easiest way to say it. We have separate grants, we apply separately, and they're managed separately. Food services is not the same, even the same company, so there's different food
So when you
services.
look at our food services director does not work for Hampstead. They're just a Timberlane position, so similar to that
Well,
kind of.
that's a Whitson's position,
Oh, right.
but it's still a Timberlane specific, and they have their own food service. So there's no synergy, there's no crossover, there's no cross-pollination of those grants or food service. So, you would be adding services to Timberlane, enhancing the services that, the SAU provides. But we do have people in buildings and in programs that are just Timberlane specific. So it's not that out of the ordinary, right? It's probably more common than less.
Okay. Sue?
So Timberlane requested to have Mr. Colby come in. We are paying, Timberlane is paying him as a consultant. Why would we now want to go back to the SAU where you started by saying, we weren't able to move the dial? Why do we want to go back there to continue to move the dial? We've got something going here. He's come in, we've waited for this kind of a proposal. He's given us his suggestions. I'm agreeing with Brian and with Jen that we need to move this along at the Timberlane level.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think I could? what would be helpful is just some guidance in terms of, I know part-time, what you think, what's that salary range, for a part-time? Is it half-time, are we talking 50%? And then what's 50% of a bookkeeper? Is that 30,000, is it 40,000, is it 50,000? So some guidelines as we write this, because I think if we write too aggressive of a job description with a salary that doesn't match or vice versa, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
I would agree. Jen?
Is it,
Do we already have bookkeeper positions on staff? Granted, they don't do this particular function, correct?
That's correct. This is same but different. So, I mean, if you gave us the guidance, then that would, how much you write into this job description. I think it's very clear. You made it clear what you want the roles to be, right? Maybe perhaps you could tell us what this is worth and.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody's debating about the
No,
the role itself. I think we're sort of debating about, what bucket is the money gonna come from to pay for this person?
Yeah.
it's
I think
our
we know-
bucket, our bucket.
If I could, I think if you know how much it is, that may help you decide where you think it should come from. Right? If it's a lot, then you may be thinking differently than if it's a smaller number and it's something you think we can work into the budget pretty easily.
Okay.
What is the number in terms of,
What's the hours, what's the going rate?
Not sure, exactly. Would need to.
are you gonna run on presidency too? Okay.
Not at all.
It's 30.
Good answer.
Does,
So could we take this as an action item for our next meeting, that we would have an update on it?
That's what I was gonna say. I would think that the job description would be written, not posted, until we approve it, along with the salary and all that, because how would we know?
we don't do that.
Yeah, I definitely would,
That,
we're not gonna be able to,
we need a job description saying how many hours, do you know what I'm saying? You need to kinda, I'm looking at you for guidance on this.
Jen?
I guess, I think I'd like to make a motion then to request that the superintendent work with Mr. Colby to come back to us at our next meeting after maybe doing a little bit of market research and analysis to see what the pay rate is for a full-time and cut it in half position, and what those responsibilities might look like.
Yeah, I'd be interested in how many hours for how much money.
well, an actual proposal
Yeah.
Right.
that the board can act on versus us trying to write a
Are you
proposal.
seconding my motion?
I'll second your motion, Jen, it was just so nicely worded.
Okay. A lot of words in that motion. Did you get them all, Ken, I think?
I did not, but I shortened it a bit.
Go ahead.
Motion to
No, no,
request the
you-
superintendent work with Greg Colby to research and present a part-time position proposal. And that's a part-time, and that is a bookkeeping, I'm going to make sure I include that, part-time bookkeeping proposal.
For grants and food services?
Thank you.
Okay. Motion made by Jen, seconded by Brian. Lee, discussion?
For grants and food services only as a Timberlane employee.
Okay, anybody else? No, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous.
And if I could, that's helpful, because this typically would not, I know what the board wants, right? It's not typically something that would have come to the board. That would be something that we would have created. It's just a function, that's something we would have just done, right? But I'm well aware that you want to see it and know what it is before we kind of go with it. And it's new position, so, but it's not the kind of position that normally would come to the board. That's why I was asking what I was asking, right?
Okay.
We want to get it right.
Nobody has
Mr.
anything
Colby,
else?
thank you so much.
Thank you very
For all
much.
your assistance.
All your help. We appreciate it.
Glad to help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg, nice to see you.
All right, we'll move on to our summer projects list.
Mr. Chair.
How are we doing, Tom?
Good, thank you. In your packet, you should have two documents associated with facilities projects. The first I will call your attention to is the paper with the two tables, listed summer projects.
No,
Packet.
it's a presentation, that's fine.
Yep,
This one?
Yep.
Summer projects?
yep.
Oh, got
I'll start with the biggest project that we have this summer, and that would be the Performing Arts Center, that the voters were kind enough to give the approval for to withdraw from the capital reserve. So the bid documents are currently live online. I've distributed them to some of the major bid networks, where a lot of the commercial construction industry, gathers these bids to participate in. I'm in the process of sending out directly to prospective bidders, major commercial siding contractors, the bid documents, so they can be invited as well. A week from tomorrow, we'll be doing site visits for anybody interested. And if anybody can't make it, I'll make an appointment so everybody can see the existing conditions. Also, as mentioned, I believe in the superintendent's report recently, that we have a very large grant through the state of New Hampshire Public Infrastructure Fund to replace all of the security cameras in the school district. So we'll be looking at performing that over the summer. A lot of that is being done with in-house labor. So we'll be looking at going directly to a dealer to purchase these cameras. So that'll not only replace one-for-one every existing camera, but it'll also add additional cameras throughout the district in much-needed areas.
So Tom, excuse me, so there, that 323,000,
Yes.
it says 80%
Yep.
reimburses 80% of the 323, or is?
That's correct. So
Okay.
the total project cost is at $323,000. And our local share is roughly $72,000, so 20% of that number. I'm very thankful to the state to issue these funds out, and happy to do this project.
And if
Much
you-
needed.
And if you could, because Tom and I met, actually, a couple of times here about the PAC, so that is still being explored to do masonry in the lower portion.
Sure, I can explain that. So, and that's we went live with the bid documents this week. And, Brian, you brought up a good point, and it's something I wanted to do too, is look at, a masonry skirt per se around the bottom, pretty much to the door level of the building, where you see a lot of rot and major issues. So I worked with the architect to do what's called an add deduct. So any bidder that's bidding on this, if they're a siding contractor, they have the opportunity to bid on the drawings as is, but then also deduct that quantity from their bid. And then we could evaluate the bids that come in. And from there, if we were within budget, we could seek out a mason to do the masonry. We would have to pay the architect a little bit more because there's some details in there that he'll have to design. So, the two materials meet up nicely. But I think everybody's in agreement that, masonry is a better product. And we have the availability to do that with the current structure, at least on the bottom half, so.
If I could just add some of the background, because I know Brian and I have had some conversations relative to this matter. And it's to look at, if you're looking at that right now, we're going to do the PAC. It's roughly about 20 years ago that the PAC was done. So we got done with one bond. We're going to start another bond, hopefully, with the voter support in the future. But it's sort of like that cycle of every 20 years that we're going to be, addressing things in the district. So if we put this product, which has a lifespan of 20 to 30 years, it's probably going to be on the same list 20 to 30 years from now, which will be on the same cycle as another bond. So it's going to mean that every bond cycle, we're doing pretty much the same replacement at the PAC. Exploring the cost of what it's truly going to be. I know we threw it out originally when we were looking at it, but we wanted to basically revisit it and make sure that we cannot go down that road.
Sure.
Because it's cost prohibitive. But if it's something that we can attain where we would introduce it into the PAC, it would allow this project to sort of have the longevity that we really need so that we can move funds to other projects and not have to address this PAC every 20 to 25 years, say.
Oh, I agree with you. I know that the siding product, I believe it's a 30-plus year product. And I'll be honest, anything that I'm going to have my hands involved with, I'm looking at, 25 to 30-plus years for the materials. That's a great point, and I'm happy to look into the masonry piece of it. So we'll see how the bids come in, and if it's advantageous, I'll bring it to the board to go forward with a masonry contractor. But we'll wait until June 11th to see how those bids roll in. Also on the list, you'll see I added the SAU carpet. And I only brought that up because you're in this room every 2 weeks, right? But then also, it's been brought up at our Facilities and Safety Committee. We've had a couple trips on this carpet. It's bunched up. It can't be repaired. It's, past its useful life. So I just want to make you aware of that, so when you come into the meeting, it's,
Okay.
I brought it to your attention. At the same time, you see there's a lot of exposed wires. If you look behind you in your chairs, there's a lot of raceway. So we'll be trenching at the same time to put conduit in the ground and bury that before we put the carpet down, so.
Yeah.
I will bring your attention on that same page. You'll see deferred projects from FY19. And roughly this time last year, I presented a projects list, knowing that we were going into a default budget, so the capital improvement plan projects weren't all going forward. But we had $75,000 in total design work for roof replacements. We had $15,000 for the design work associated with the window replacements at the high school, and $66,000 in science lab updates. I know the Facilities Committee took action to defer the science lab updates once again, and I also touched upon that when I was presenting the last time on facilities, because if we're talking about a long-term bond or a building project, and we have a need to update our science labs at the high school, and we also have the need to add additional classrooms, it may make more sense to just build new rather than renovate existing science labs. It may be more cost-effective. So that was one of the reasons for the deferral of that project. And the design work goes along with some of the roof replacements, but, after having conversations with Mr. Boyle, I have an alternative solution from going directly to an architect to design these roofs, and I can share that with you when we get into the list. But what I'm looking for is kind of to hear the board's priority and some direction on where we want to go with these projects, because if you look at the other form or the other paper that I attached to the report, to see the capital improvement summary, that's a document that we use to track all of these through the budgeting process. You'll see in total that through facilities, sites, and fixtures, we have a total of $934,513 earmarked in projects. And between the 4,200 and the 4,600 accounts that these projects are typically drawn from, they're funded at $500,000 this year. So yeah, I guess I need direction on where the board would like to go. I can share my priorities, but I just need a little direction.
Can I ask you a question on the previous? Going back to this list, I thought in the winter I thought the science cabinets, I thought the discussion was that the science lab cabinets were ordered.
No. I know one time over the summer, we weren't going to meet the lead times necessary to order them during the summer, so we were delaying it for the winter. And then as the budget ebbs and flows, I always like to keep a reserve just for, in case we have an issue with a septic system, for example, or we have a boiler that breaks. So that would be the type of project I'd kick out to the end of a year.
So what have we done in those rooms to address the problems? Because those cabinets, I mean, I was in one of those rooms and the door fell off on my foot. So I know those cabinets.
Was that recently?
That was last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I can double check and, pull up the history of work orders, because anytime there's something broken, we ask that, the school puts in work orders, we assign a technician to it, they'll repair it. So if it's a door that fell off on your foot,
So,
I'll
I
double
mean,
check and make sure that.
We had talked about that when we were talking about needing to replace those cabinets.
Sure.
I don't.
So I can share that there's some conflict between, we have a capital improvement plan as I'm working on the facilities master plan, and then, different directives. So that was one of the reasons why I called for a workshop, so we can try to tie all these things together, because we have a CIP list that says replace the cabinets, and then we have a facilities master plan where I'm trying to forecast out 20 years of building improvements, right? So I don't want to be irresponsible with the taxpayer dollar, spend $66,000 on cabinets if 3 years from now we elect to just build brand new science labs and then they go in the demo pile, right?
That
So,
would be a good idea.
yeah, I mean, that's why I'm looking for some guidance and, from the board and where your priorities are for this. 'cause-
Sue?
So, I'm trying to think back through my CIP brain here. So we've done 2 of the rooms already, or 1 of the rooms already?
2 rooms received cabinetry upgrades.
Cabinetry
Yep.
updates. This is for a 3rd room?
The 66,000 was to do 2 more.
Oh, 2
labs.
more rooms?
2 more with the same type of
Same
cabinetry that
kind
was
of-
done in the other 2,
Okay.
which I don't know if that solves our long-term needs in those science labs anyways.
What's the total number of rooms?
So now it's at 4?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
6?
Somebody think?
Of science rooms?
Total science rooms? They're all at
More than 4, but,
120. Those are the 4 old ones. It's 605 and 601. So those are the 6 older ones.
yeah.
And then there's 2 more newer, and then 318, 320, and a different days.
So would it be safe to say with this 2 additional rooms being done that we will finish the 4 that are the oldest?
There's still 2 more, 601 and 605.
Yeah.
Right, so there's a total of 6 that are really old. 2 are done.
Older vintage.
But I don't want to mislead the board or the public for that matter and think that just because we replace cabinets, that means that we've updated our science labs either.
Right, no.
So, I mean, I just want to make sure that message
Oh,
is
You guys did a great job. I mean, you can definitely see the difference between one lab and another one.
for sure.
Right.
I think 601 is the room I'm thinking of, in the middle, on the end.
Down the hallway, middle hallway? Yeah.
Right.
And that's not done yet.
No.
Sheila?
I asked Brian this earlier, and I'm still trying to comprehend. All these red lines,
Yeah, I'd love to be able to bring that to your attention. So you'll see a lot of red strike-throughs on this list.
right?
I don't want it to confuse you and make you think that that's all been done.
No,
I
because
tried-
Chromebooks is one of them, so that's why
Right,
I'm
so
asking.
I did 2 things. I crossed off all of the technology items,
It's at
right?
the
Because,
top.
so, just so I could bring the discussion to the facility items. And then anything that the board voted not to recommend in
Right.
the current budget to bring forward.
Like the burnishers, we voted not to recommend.
That's correct.
Yeah, so many of that, the walls, we voted not to do.
Yep.
The art cabinets, the observation windows, that we voted not to to move those forward.
Okay,
You
so,
see, there's no number in the column. So the ones we decided to move forward, I'm sorry, Tom, for speaking, but it's
Yeah.
our report, so.
Yep.
Are in the column that says recommended by TRSB, and you can see what those add up to be.
Sure. And I don't want to, confuse anybody and think that we're crossing it off because we don't need Chromebooks or laptops or anything else. This
Well,
is, I'm just trying to make
this
sure.
is why I'm asking the question, because we're gonna go back to the Sandown Central observation windows.
No, they're still in the CIP.
They're still in the CIP,
They're
but how
still in
does
the
something
record.
like that get off the CIP?
They would have to be removed by the stakeholders.
Which it will be this year, actually. So you're not going to see that come back.
But do you
So
understand what
there-
I'm
so the
Some of
proc-
these things are older than dirt, and
Well, they're not-
they're old. This has been, since the consolidation, this has been on there, so,
Since the CIP formed, it's been on there. So
okay.
it's 3 years. So
Consolidation also, so
if-
now we're,
if you want it taken off, the stakeholders would remove it. There's
Or,
a
I mean,
process to go
there is.
through.
There's a form, just like you would add a CIP
where I'm
item.
trying to go with this is originally, it was Mr. Hughes that put it on the CIP, because
The principal did
originally,
too.
one of the special education
It was a special
personnel
ed.
wanted it.
Yep.
And now we're finding, as you know, because you were standing there with me, we don't need them because now technology is taking over. So I really want to be able to sift through some of this stuff that might be old, that maybe has rectified itself, so that we can get to the things that really we need.
Sure. I mean, I would make the recommendation because this is a CIP document that's comprised of not only school personnel, but community personnel, and it's by vote, right? So I'm not bringing this to you. It's on this list because a committee voted to bring it forward, right? So I know that and the reason why I shared that during the tour is the new principal, and this happens, new leadership comes in and they have a different outlook, or they have a different view of things. She doesn't have that same need, so as the stakeholder from that building, she's going to fill out that form, right? And it's gonna come to the CIP committee, and we'll take action as a whole to remove it from that list, right? So,
That's what I was trying to get to, is how do we get it?
but also,
to
it
the
didn't
point
go
where it comes
further,
We don't.
it stopped here at the school board too,
Stakeholder does.
right? So, you're a pretty big stakeholder, so it wouldn't go forward this year. It's just still on the list for tracking purposes.
We want to track the projects, we want to track when they were asked for, when they got moved along, this one's gotten moved along, and if it doesn't get moved along into the next CIP, the form will be filled out, and we will show it in our document.
We had another item on that list, one of the ones with a strike through to it, and it was removing the 1,600 walls.
Yeah.
And that's because we had a new principal who had a different outlook. And I brought it to the board last year during budget planning and project planning, that was the wish of the new principal, is to just remove that, because he didn't see the same value as the former principal, so. I
So
think,
that won't show up in the next document,
Okay.
yeah.
the 20.
Okay, Brian?
Okay, take a shot at this thing here. It's May 16th. I don't really want to go through all the nuts and bolts of the entire Timberlane campus. I asked, and I talked to you, Sean, I want to get Tom in here. The key thing, I want to get in front of the board. I reached out to our accounting firm and talked to Mike Campo, and I was trying to use, there are 3 roofs there, Academy, Pollard roof, and I sand down Central,
That's correct.
that I wanted to use the balance of this year's money, because the projects you're talking about are really money starting July 1st. That's DCIP projects. I think everyone in the room knows that we're way behind in our maintenance, so I was trying to then make sure, we'll talk to the CPA that we could do this. You've got 135, 125, 140, you've got,
It's 400,000 in roofs.
there you go,
Right on the
400,000
list,
roofs.
yeah.
So if we could, I think what the board should be looking at tonight, because of the date, the work has to get approved, go out to bid, exercised, so we can save the money. You have to encumber the money, as you know, before July 1st. So you've got 6 weeks on the clock of just calendar time, so a lot of these other projects, that they're not going away, they can be done, but I don't, as I sat down with Tom and Jeff last week and said if we could get our heads around something to bring in front of the board to get us started in the right direction in terms of some monetary investments in the facilities and take advantage of, there'll be, I don't know what the hard number is, but there'll be probably between $1 million and $1.5 million surplus anyway, like there usually is. So, but they'll easily be enough to handle these 3 roofs that are already identified. They were identified to be taken out of next year's money. I'd rather see them taken out of this year's money because we have it.
In the surplus, from the
Yeah,
surplus.
and then deal with other projects with next year. But, and along that same line, we talked earlier today that I think our board needs a facilities workshop so we can go over all these things that Jill's talking about. So there's so much going on here. But, so I think we should take some kind of action tonight to protect the current year money in the big projects, and then take it from there. And then obviously you have summer projects you gotta get approved too.
Yeah, and I'd also like to bring something else for the board's consideration when we're talking about these 3 roofs, right? So those are just small sections of the total facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, we do Pollard, right? That's small in comparison to the rest of the needs, right? So I would have liked to, do this at a workshop, but I just want to float it out. If we have $400,000 to spend and you want to earmark it towards roofs, and let's say Pollard happens to be the worst, which it is, does it make sense to do 3 small-scale roof projects, or take that $400,000 and just complete 1 school? I think it's more
We mean complete
economic.
one school roof?
Correct, so,
Because you have an accounting issue here. You can't just,
no, I'm saying if that $400,000 were to take care of all of the roofing issues, then that school would be done.
okay.
Right?
Instead of do a little bit in this school and a little.
That's
in this.
correct, right? So, I mean, that's something I wanted to float out, and I'm happy to bring that back, to the next meeting. It's just different options.
And the
for
other
you.
two,
Could go another year.
is that what are you saying?
Yeah, if we're able to get another couple of years out of those specific roofs.
But we're asking you. I
Right.
mean, probably the people in the room, I have
Yeah.
no idea what's
No,
going on at the
that's why
Acton Academy of St.
I'll
Central
come back
Roof.
with a plan, just wanted to, see what your feelings were.
Well,
Are we trying to spread it out by,
I'm trying to make sure you protect the monies that the clock is
Correct.
ticking. It is May 16th, so you don't have a ton of time to,
I think that in summary, I think what we're looking at is maybe is earmarking 400 grand for fixing roofs to be done or under agreement by the end of this fiscal year, using this fiscal year's funds.
Right.
The decision to do all on one roof or 3 roofs spread out,
Doesn't matter.
over that's yet to be determined. But I think that the goal would be is to earmark and move forward with this
So would
money.
that be our decision in your mind, that we would decide on the roofs? I'm not a roof expert. Or
No,
would we
we're gonna take a
rely on our
recommend-
expert?
I was just looking for direction on this. that's
For a
all.
recommendation, if we're looking at, do we put all the money in one particular roof?
Doesn't
Or
matter
do
to me.
we fix 3 of them,
A little bit on each roof.
depending upon what a little bit is, because we don't know. Sheila?
Somebody needs to help me out. So these 3 roofs add up to $400,000. So what is the $75,000? Is that on top of the $400,000?
75,000?
Yeah, so what I presented last year were design services to make
Oh,
sure.
So it's
Designs.
$475,000 that we would need.
That's correct. So this is earmarked to do the work, and just like I had presented before, this would be to develop the scope.
So there's another.
However, there's an alternative approach after discussing with the manufacturer's rep that I could share with you, to possibly put that $75,000 called here towards actually fixing the roofs.
yeah, because when I had sat down with Tom and Jeff, that I'm just not a big fan of spending $75,000 to redo a roof that they're not changing the roof. I mean, they're not changing a pitch or anything. It's a roof. You're going from a different type of product, and it just seemed to be an awful lot of money to me.
Yeah.
And I would not.
Pollard specifically is a different roof, however.
But it's the same, it's not like you're changing the frame of the
Structure.
roof and the structure, thank you.
Correct.
So-
Replacing
so-
it with like kind.
Yeah, so it just seemed like a lot of money to me, so that's why I was not I realized there might be some kind of engineering needed or architectural needed for spec documents, but as we talked about.
Sure.
I was
And I
not.
was going to share that I've reached out, because an alternative is, we have Firestone products on all of our roofs that have been done in recent years. Right? It'd be my recommendation to stay with that product for warranty tracking. Right? It's a reliable product. So I reached out to a Firestone rep who gave me a rough commitment that he would help develop that specification so it met their warranty, right? Because that's what we're after, is to make sure that this lasts 25-plus years. So working with that manufacturer's rep, that would allow the board to still have a competitive bid process, because there's multiple companies that install this type. And the manufacturer would do a lot of the legwork and spec development, as long as we use their product. And I think it still meets your policies for competitive bidding.
I'm sorry. Whatever you and this Firestone rep come up with, I'd like to hear, but when we were down here a week ago, these buildings we're talking about, these roofs, some of them, even like whether it's the academy, they don't physically even touch each other. So you can
Right.
fix a section of roof, and it's, that just because you're doing the whole building.
Sure.
So I would be, whatever you guys think, I would be addressing the roofs that are in the worst condition.
Correct.
Period. And
Yeah.
if the academy roof is worse, then the other section will take care of the academy roof.
Of course.
That's-
What I was trying to do is use the, kind of the economy of scale and cut down on mobilizations, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't replace a perfectly good roof, because I think we
Right.
have
Right.
multiple
That's-
sections on multiple buildings that are in the same condition.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
trying to specify which one is the worst.
Jen had her hand up, I'll go after her. if you don't mind.
I was just gonna ask, so instead of doing the smaller sections, are you saying $400,000 would do all of Pollard?
I'm not able to confirm that 100% tonight.
Just throwing ideas
Yeah.
around, right?
Okay.
I'm really driving like the manufacturer's rep to do a lot of this work, and even up until 6:59, I was still, going back and forth and
They
trying to
know the
push them.
timeline that we're under, though, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's not just having the specifications, it's having a contract signed by June 30th,
Right.
right? So
Mhm.
it's not only specs, it's specs, advertisement, bidding, and contract. So
Right.
it's a lot of work to fit into a small period of time. But I will do my very best, because, I want to do it just as bad as you. So.
Lee?
I appreciate the thinking of, do all of one building rather than parts of three. But I really think, we have a CIP, we have items called out in it. I'd rather just stick to the plan. Otherwise, I feel a lot of people put a tremendous amount of effort into the CIP. And if we start to pick them off and say, yeah, no, not really, we're just going to go and do our own thing, we lose credibility with them. And we start deviating from the plan. We develop the plan, stick to the plan.
Sure.
Okay, Sue?
Well, I mean, no disrespect, Tom. So I think you kind of pulled us off into the weeds. We're off on the side of the road now, rolling around in roofs. So if we could, really, that's what happens. We get on a topic and then we all go over here and all we're talking about is, what school is gonna get the roof? If we could agree that we'd be willing to go along with Brian's suggestion, that we use surplus, some of this year's surplus, to get some, let's say 400,000 plus 75, 475 to earmark for those roof or roofs projects and get something in writing and underway, because you've got a time problem now. By the way, it's May 16th, I believe. So if we could agree with that and not get into the weeds about what roof, what product, it's him that should be doing that. And coming back with, I've decided this is what we should do. Not us discussing it now.
Sheila?
That's all well and good, Sue, but we still haven't had a discussion on what a potential surplus is going to be or anything else, so
Yeah,
I would have a problem doing that before we talk that, which is next, I believe, on the,
Well, yeah, we did
coming
it
up.
backwards.
Okay.
We knew the
Jen?
surplus.
I'm struggling with the word surplus. It's still this year's money in this year's budget, right? That's what we're talking about? Mm-hmm. So
correct.
if
I'm
we,
talking about summer
Correct.
projects.
so if we,
but we're,
But
if we
you need money
use
to
the
pay for it.
But you
money
need money.
that we have, then it's not a surplus, correct?
Okay,
It's go-
It'll be taken away from the surplus.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It'll be taken away, so.
We have to take it
But
from.
if the money's there
not spent.
to do these projects,
Well,
but next
It's
year.
not.
We're in
the money is not there.
Not there to do
We are
those
gonna
projects.
have to make a line shift. This is over 25,000. Mr. Dowd's gonna have to let us know
oh, you're
where
saying
we're
for next
moving.
year, I'm sorry.
No, this
no,
is for
this
this
year.
year.
I'm sorry, I thought
That
you just
money
said
is
next year.
not in the budget
Correct.
for this year, period. We are looking at taking money, moving lines that were not earmarked for this,
Yep.
and putting it into a different line. I'm certainly not gonna vote on this right now, because I have no idea what the budget looks like, what we're projecting for a surplus, as Sheila said, and where we're making the fund transfers from. And I can tell you right now, even if somebody tells me that right now, I'm not gonna vote on it tonight, because that's a big amount of money that we're looking at, and we need to review that budget before we make that decision.
Yeah, I think, to Sue's point, we kind of got off a little bit, like, there's summer projects, right? So we're talking about what we want to do during the summer, and then to Brian's point, how are we paying for it? So I think we're talking two different things. We're talking about money that's been budgeted for next year for certain things, and then the surplus discussion that you just had. I think people start to get a little confused, because it's a summer project doesn't necessarily mean it's all done with surplus or not,
Right.
so. I guess we're looking for some direction in terms of your priorities about what should we use next year's budget for, their items on this list for summer projects, and what you'll be able to discuss later, and not necessarily vote on tonight, but you'll know what you might have for surplus, to decide how much of that money you would. All I ask is that you give us some time, if you're not gonna waive bidding processes and those sorts of things, policies, because 6 weeks becomes 4 weeks, becomes 2 weeks very, very quickly. And getting somebody under contract prior to July 1st is not as easy as it may sound sometimes, right? So I hope all that makes sense, but I think that's where I think we're getting a little bit confused about summer projects and how we're paying for them.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and just to remind you, like, the summer projects are on this sheet here.
The
So-
second sheet, not the CIP.
Right, so you're looking at 84,000, right, total, because you have your total for the security camera project. That's about 72,000, give or take, of the local contribution, and then 12,000 for the carpet replacement. So that brings us to 84,000, basically, out of 500.
500,000.
Out of the 500,000 that's budgeted. So,
So are there things on the CIP list we want to push into doing summer?
yeah, I mean, basically, what are the priorities?
The playground and for me, the playground and the middle school.
So is it safe to say then we have all of the 500K that's in that line item?
No, minus 84.
Well, minus 84, so
No.
No, how much do we have? I thought we only had a couple 100,000.
No,
What's the
I'm
number?
talking about for FY '20, for what starts July 1st. This sheet here is representative of that.
July
What I had planned.
1st.
And we have
Wait.
capital 500.
This is why we're getting mixed up.
Yep.
Okay? In this current year budget, there was 500,000 in the 4,600 lines. How much of that is left?
200,000.
About 200,000.
200,000.
Yes.
200,000. So there's 200,000, and you have summer project work here of what total? Summer project work.
But this is coming out, he wants to make
Out of
this
next year's
the
budget.
next year budget that we just approved in March, in the July 1 beginning.
Why don't we, I agree completely with what you say. We have $200,000 in this current budget. What are
Right.
we spending it on?
Brian's trying to push that forward. Use 200, get some of the surplus, run it up to 400, and do some of the projects that we couldn't do this year because we only got 200 left. We need a little more to do any of those projects.
So-
He's suggesting roofs
So Brian's saying take 200,000,
that we've got
from-
left.
well, the 200,000 that's in the 4,600 lines that we have left.
Yep.
And then you're talking about taking money out of non-capital lines
Moving
and moving it into
Non-capital.
capital lines. That's what you're doing.
That's what his idea is.
that's what you'd have to do to.
That's exactly what my deal is.
Go ahead.
I think, and Dr. Farah's, we're looking at projected year-end financials, so it may make sense to have them present, table this for now, skip down to that, get your answers about what you think you have projected surplus, and then continue your discussion.
Yes.
Yep.
I feel very backwards right now.
Okay.
I know this is hard to believe, but I'm following this. I know exactly what they're talking about, and I think
I
Kim
do
does
too.
too.
I do too.
And Brian does too. Exactly. We got now, and a month and a half from now, we're in another full year.
Correct.
So we've got money here, and a little extra. Maybe.
There you go.
Jen?
I don't, maybe Brian can explain to me. I don't understand why we're looking at, okay, we have 200. Can we get 200? I mean, if we have 200, do we have, sure, we can find $200,000 worth of projects.
Oh.
Because it looks like we have $1.2 million worth of projects.
No, that's the wrong year.
So why wouldn't we just do the 200 and then look at,
What would you like?
I don't, it's fine.
I would think a proposal of, addressing these three roofs that we have that have attention, if one is 200,000 and the other two are $100,000 each, you would say, okay, maybe we pay the $200,000 one out of this year's budget, get that under contract, and then we move forward with the other two roofs, and that they would come out of the next, starting July 1st funds.
And then the surplus, we just return to the taxpayers.
We could do that, or we could decide to move it all and push it forward, but that's gonna have to be dictated on the financials aspect of it. If we know we have 200 grand
Is it
right
the
now.
roof that comes closest to 200,000? We gonna arm wrestle for it? Are we
Well,
gonna,
It just,
I mean,
We have to
Okay.
have,
he's told you with the roof that's the worst, big chunks falling in kids' lunches.
And how much is that roof? 125? That's the Pollard roof? What's the cost of the roof that's the worst?
Well, the estimate was 125 a year ago. Yeah, that's an estimate.
That's an estimate.
What it was.
Well, if you take that 125 and add it to the money that we need to put in for the security cameras, right? Doesn't that bring you up to 200?
We've got money earmarked, the security cameras
So that's
be
before.
coming out of
that's-
July 1st. money.
The security cameras are out of next year's budget.
Oh, that's out of next year's budget.
Right,
Yeah, that's where, again, we're getting the summer projects
Yeah,
mixed up
see.
in how we're paying for them.
right.
I just really would like a budget update before we even go any further on this. Because,
That's fine.
That will give you firm numbers to at
Sure.
least to talk about.
exactly, that's
Fine,
why I
let's do it.
don't, we're
but I
just
don't
going
want to
on.
lose the
Beginning
2
of
weeks
June.
of, or 1 or 2 to get
You're
things
gonna have it
out.
right now.
I was gonna say, can Jeff get it first tonight?
No, I thought he was gonna give it to you
Got
now.
it.
He has already done it.
It's later in the agenda, but I'm asking that you should bring it up now and.
I agree.
Finish both discussions kind of simultaneously.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Okay. Moving to the next agenda item, Jeff.
I might have trouble, Nick, actually, can I borrow your agenda packet?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
There you go.
Oh, this one, yeah.
It's the,
You guys are running ahead of me here, getting everything out of order. Bring that down. So in your packet, after all the bus reports, after assurances, you have a sheet called mid-year projections.
Okay, you found it.
yeah, it's a single page.
Whereabouts was that, Jeff?
Keep going, it's right before policies, I think.
Yeah, it is right before policies, yeah.
Single page, so it's sticking.
Got it. Thank you.
There you go. You were right.
So, what happened? So the mid-year, we'll call it a mid-year projection, it's the projection through, based on our financials through April, and the projections going forward. And I've broken down best estimates, and typically this was done through May, but in the spirit of trying to identify where we're at now to identify projects down the road, I've prepared the mid-year projection as you find in front of you. So you'll see variances favorable and unfavorable by major categories. So we have salaries, I believe that we're going to have a favorable variance there of $1,250,000, health dental, $50,000, other benefits, $335,000, books, info, resources, software, et cetera, $100,000. We'll have a bit of a deficiency in the special education side for professional services, but we'll have some excess in tuition. I would expect that we'll have some professional improvement funds available. We'll be possibly over in legal by $30,000. Utilities, I'm expecting a favorable variance up to $65,000. Transportation, it's possible that we'll end up with a favorable variance or surplus in those budget lines of $140,000 for regular education, $160,000 for special education. Major maintenance, which is just what we were talking about, that $200,000 that we just talked about, I have no reason to doubt that we'll have that money fully committed before we leave this room tonight, so I've shown that as zero. And then other, miscellaneous accounts, about $100,000. So we're looking at total appropriations variance of $2,350,000. Revenue is coming in shorter, and I have to confirm that aspect of it. We're a little low in some categories, so I believe that we'll probably be a little bit lower in revenue of $400,000, giving us a total before capital reserve contribution, which I don't think there'll be any if it's done correctly, if we're able to spend the capital as we've been discussing tonight, $1,950,000. I also have a fund balance retention of $200,000, which I would anticipate would be renewed. We'll renew something into the new year on that.
Okay. So, and it's safe to say that with the major maintenance going to zero, is that you're assuming that like that $200K that you have in that line number gets
Will be
spent
spent
relative to doing projects that we're
Something.
gonna be talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Sheila?
Remind me what the surplus was last year.
The projected surplus?
Tell me what that number was for last year's surplus return.
2.3,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
2.3.
2.3.
Okay.
we retained 200, right? We retained 200, was that what we
retain 200?
retained? Or 600 did we retain?
No, it
No,
wasn't
it wasn't
600.
600.
No,
I think we- I think
It was
you're right.
between 150 and 2, I think.
You know what, I think you're right at the 150.
Yeah, I think it was 150.
So we retained some of that, we returned the rest. We put anything in capital reserve, was there any capital money left to put in?
There was about $38,000
Oh,
left.
17,000, so we didn't have the 250 that the voters said we could put in, so we didn't have much of a contribution there. So,
So at the end of the day, and I would, just discussing this projection, generally, we can see that a lot of there were some adjustments and cuts made by the school board coming into the year, and you can see those picked up largely in salaries and to some extent in other benefits. So that really comprises the majority of what we are looking at this year. As a general proposition, I'm tempted to say that there will be very little in capital, quote unquote, left to allocate beyond the 200,000. It's possible to have some, but I don't foresee a contribution to the capital reserve fund of 250,000. It'll probably be a very low number, like it was last year.
Jen?
I have to ask, just because it was such a hotly debated topic, how did we, and I'm grateful that we did, but how did we end up with 140,000 in regular ed transportation? I'm,
Looking at where we were and what we could have needed, I don't know. I can check in with Sandy on the specific drivers on that. We also haven't scheduled our ESY yet either, as to where that's going to come out. So, but we also have saved some money from.
so that's what's there now, but that number might not be the same at the end of the year.
the end, yeah.
so ESY for summer comes out of that, which fund, the special ed transportation line? or the
Correct, yeah.
regular?
I give an allowance for that.
Yeah,
But we also have, anyone who's here, I don't need to probably mention, we've been light on athletic transport. We've cut down on field trip transport as well.
And those are regular, I'm not
Correct.
talking about the
Yep.
sum, I'm talking about the regular ed,
Regular.
$140,000. So that is that what we currently have, or is that what we're projected at the end
Projecting.
of the year, to still have $140,000 left in that line?
Possibly, yeah.
After field trips, after ESY, after any athletic things where we go to championships and playoffs, we have to transport kids.
Yeah.
That's the two figures you're looking at?
That's what I would estimate that,
So those are estimates, right?
the special education, that's a
Right, and I understand
crapshoot.
that's
If we get a sh-
variable, and so I wasn't really specifically asking about that
Yeah,
one. I was
sure,
just the
sure.
regular ed one.
Shared ride costs, it cuts our costs in half.
Right.
Multiple shared ride cuts our cost to a third.
Right.
So that's really a function of how well we're able to share.
Okay, Dr. Mattson?
Yeah, I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least to point this out. Remember, the staffing line, which we left a lot of positions open, and some of those are in the area of special ed. We are meeting our obligations by IEPs. I don't mean to suggest that we're not. However, we are auditing, looking at services and those sorts of things, and obviously working with Susan to see what we need next year. And so that your next meeting, you'll get those enrollment and those projected staffing needs. I've asked all the principals to make sure that anything and everything that you think you need that wasn't, whether it's in the budget or not, in terms of staffing, that you make sure that Christy has that in advance of next meeting so she can present that to you. But I think some of that line, I can tell you, some of that line is really some positions that we didn't fill that made the special ed world a little more challenging this year, and I think Lauren and some of the other, and Susan and others would agree. So they did a great job. We got it done. Everybody got the services, but that still, I think, was a major driver on that line. And so you're gonna have some decisions to make about staffing for next year at your next meeting when we show you those enrollment projections, and then the audit that we did in terms of services that we need to provide, what that will look like. It's not earth-shattering different, but there are some recommendations and suggestions. I met with TTA, and TTA had some concerns too about some of the workload with some of their people in their unit. So we're working closely with TTA and with Susan to make sure that everybody's comfortable with what we're providing, how we're providing it, and that everyone's, and that we're meeting the collective bargaining agreement in every capacity. So I just wanted you to hear that. And like I said, you can expect those enrollment and staffing recommendations, if you will, at your next meeting. Thank you.
Kim?
I mean, to speak to salaries, because I've looked at the budget, I know that there are salaries within special ed and within the regular line, the 1,100. I'm not sure, Jeff, why you wouldn't have put the salaries excess under the special ed line. Why did you roll all the salaries up and down further? You've got special ed and then you've got some of those lines, because I think that would have been easier for us in terms
Analyze.
of understanding
Sure.
where the salaries were not spent.
Okay, that's fair.
So just so
But
I
at the end of
understand
the-
what you're asking, just to separate out the salaries from special ed, regular ed?
Right, because you
Okay.
just said, or,
It's a total amount.
right.
Because these are, I think, well, Jeff can speak to it. The services are different than the salaries. I know you know that, but I'm not sure everybody knows that. And I'm not talking board, I think general public about, what's the difference between when we have to go out and hire somebody because we don't have a staff member that's salaried versus someone that's salaried that's here full-time. So maybe you could talk about the differences and why you did it that way, but breaking out the salary line to which salaries came out of special ed and which ones are regular ed, that's fine
Yeah.
as well.
I'll make a note.
But at the end of the day, we know that we have a projected surplus of 1.95 million.
That's the number.
The,
yeah.
the question is that are we looking as a board to authorize, or it doesn't have to be done at this meeting where we're trying to think about it, but, we're going to need to allocate funds for any additional projects that we're going to look at. So we'll be looking to augment this 200K that we have currently in the capital reserve that we're
not capital
looking to spend on projects and add additional funds so that we can do more of these projects that are,
He means the capital line.
No,
You mean the capital line,
You mean the cap- you
200,000
said
in the
capital
capital
reserve.
line.
yes,
200 is
I'm
in
sorry,
the
the capital line,
maintenance lines,
I do apologize. It's not coming out of the capital reserve, I'm sorry. The capital line of our operating
Yeah.
budget.
So and I will mention the elephant in the room, and Kim, you touched upon it. Our articles of agreement do specify that capital expenses are apportioned, to, in a certain way, and that's how we raise that money from the towns. So the question is, what is a capital expense? And what qualifies? And so one thing that I know when I look and I say, well, I know I can tell you what our capital expenses, and those are expenses that are on my fixed asset listing. So anything that's on the fixed asset listing, I can say, yeah, that's definitely a capital expense, right? Historically, I think that we've treated expenses that are greater than 10,000 and life expectancy of more than 1 year, possibly more than 3 years in some cases, as what we'll call a fixed asset or a capitalized asset. The expense used to make that capital asset, therefore, would be a capital expense. We have a policy, the board has a policy on that, DID, and that specifies that for financial reporting purposes, capitalization thresholds are set at 10,000 per item, or for like-kind aggregate purchases for all classes except infrastructure. Infrastructure is at capital depreciated if over $100,000 per item. So I'll tell you that if we have something that ends up on a capital asset schedule, it's probably a capital expense. Beyond that is an expense repair and maintenance. If we're replacing a roof, if we're refinishing a gym floor, is it a capital expense? And I know I have a policy in front of me, and our capital improvement plan reiterates that spirit, that capital expenditure or capital improvement is major expenditure for public facilities having a gross cost that exceeds threshold value. Our threshold is 10,000. Looking at a useful life of 3 years or more, not considering the annual ongoing operating expense. So in terms of what qualifies as a capital expense, our audit firm has gotten a little bit more relaxed about that standard, and the best example to provide is a road. If you have a road and you lay it down, you have a capital expense associated with that, or that's a capital asset for you. If you go back and resurface that road, you're maintaining that road.
right.
So a metric, a key, would be if we were to look at a capital expenditure as an expenditure which would extend the capacity or, so if we're gonna expand capacity or expand useful life, right? So if you take that road and you repave it because it's been 20 years, that's a maintenance project, right? But if you go in and you widen that road, that's a capital expenditure, because we've expanded capacity. So, taking that example and getting over to the situation of the roofs, there is a board policy that covers that, and what we consider to be a fixed asset or a capital asset. And therefore, if it falls under that, then it would be a capital expense. So if you were to look to do and move any of the money over, which is something that traditionally hasn't been done, certainly we'd need a waiver of our own policy, right, DID, for those expenditures. We can't waive what the Articles of Agreement say. The Articles of Agreement specify capital expenses are appropriated in a certain way, but there is some discretion as to what is considered a capital expenditure. So we have a policy. A lot of repair items have fallen under this policy before because we've had more of a strict interpretation of it. If we were to look at this policy in the future, perhaps our fixed asset policy would be something that would look for a brand new investment, or it would have maybe a definition that would expand capacity or, increase useful life. Now, if we replace a roof, does that increase useful life? Yes, it does. It increases the useful life, let's say, of the roof. However, on my capital asset schedule, that is probably Pollard School, right? Or the addition, the gym addition, the CAF addition. Think of this building. This building's on a capital asset schedule, probably is this building. If we replace the roof from a technical perspective, we're not really extending the life of the building. We're just doing repair and maintenance on it. But under our policy, it doesn't really fit that way.
You're saying DID?
DID, yeah, I have copies.
Oh,
Don't pull up your phone.
So,
I'm like,
and I know Brian's not happy with me, but I'm going to say it anyway.
don't say it.
I understand what the auditor's saying, that you could make the case that a roof is a repair and maintenance.
That's right.
Personally, I do not feel that we should be going, we have a policy and we have a CIP and precedent to say that you should not do that. So I would not be in favor of taking $200,000 out of surplus and moving it into a capital line that was not earmarked that way. I just don't think that we should be doing that, based on what we have for policies and the CIP and precedents. I just don't agree with it.
If that's the view, then
I don't know, that's my
No,
view.
I know that's your
Kim's
view.
view.
I
my
agree,
view.
that's Kim's view.
I
But
said
at that
that.
point,
That's not Brian's
we only
view.
have 200 grand that we know that we have in there,
Well-
and that's it. I
It's a
mean,
quarter.
Well, that's why I reached out to our accountant. I didn't reach out to a accountant, I reached out to our accountant. And we went over the whole thing, and Mike Campo said, yeah, and you can do that. This isn't me saying it, this is Campo saying
But
it.
did he look at the policy and our CIP and our Articles of Agreement?
I'm sure he looked at the articles of agreement. I can't tell you, I'm not going to speak for him. He worked for, they looked at the policy, but seeing how that firm has been the district's firm for almost 20 years, it's not like this is,
I mean, this
so,
would be an accounting classification of these funds being spent. That's.
that's why I call the accountant.
I don't think they would care what our policy says. It's gonna look at it from, general
Yeah,
accepted
right.
accounting practices
Well, that's-
standards would be.
That's why I call the accountant.
Sheila?
What I would be in favor for is to do the 3 roofs out of the capital from next year, the July 1st monies. And
Okay. How much money do we have? Do you
I
know?
think there's only 400,000 in that.
Right.
Next
Yeah,
year's
my
budget.
wife said all the
My
projects.
budget was at
Between the
5.
We don't have
46
enough,
and the
we don't have enough
4,200.
money to do it out of
Right.
next year either. We need to find some money someplace.
okay,
Question there would be is that if you don't spend it this year,
can I finish?
well, what's gonna happen is that it's, if it doesn't get spent, it's gonna flow to the capital reserve that we know that will, 250 will go into that account.
I didn't get to finish,
Okay,
but
go,
what my suggestion was is to do as many roofs as we could out of next year's capital. And then the 200 we have from here, pick from the CIP less that we think is, which is 200 less 84 now.
No, 200.
you can't spend down your 500,000 in capital before you even start the fiscal year.
Correct.
It was not
Correct.
prudent to do that.
No,
You could have
Okay.
can't do that, yeah.
You gotta wait, because you don't know, you could have a major expense.
Right, that's why he's only suggesting 84.
Hey, Jen?
Thank you for bringing this forward now, because I think it's helpful in looking at this. So when I look at this policy DID that talks about capital assets, building and building improvements, and so what we're talking about is maintenance, not improvements. So a roof would not be an improvement, it would be a maintenance of something that's already existing. Vehicles, furniture, equipment, those are all on this, in this policy as capital assets. And so when I look at the list here with the red lines through it, and I see things like playground equipment, classroom furniture, playground, like more playground equipment, those are all fall under this policy with capital assets, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
So that's why we're talking about, if we have the extra 200,000, that putting it towards maintenance would be cleaner, correct, Brian?
Repair.
Because that is not
It's not an
a
improvement.
building improvement, it's a building
Right,
maintenance.
There you go.
Okay,
Right.
just to make sure I understand that, thank you.
Sean, could I?
Yes.
So when the CIP committee first formed, that was a discussion we had about what was repair and maintenance and what's a capital expense. We had hours of discussion about that. Is painting a room a capital expense, or is it a maintenance and repair?
Yes.
We had a lot of discussion over that as we began. And so I think there are things on here that can be categorized as definite, they're above the threshold of 10,000, but they're definitely repair and maintenance. Buying a new vehicle is an improvement, is a capital improvement, in my definition of capital improvement. But repairing a roof is a repair. It's not adding an addition to the building, it's repairing the building you've got.
I think your definition matches the policy definition.
You think so, maybe?
I think so, yeah.
Maybe think I read that before you started.
Brian?
Well, we took this, which was good we did, we took this out of order here to come up and see what the surplus is. So even a projected surplus, like you say, Sean, of $1.9 million, let's say the projection is off, you're gonna have at least $1.5 million.
Right.
At least $1.5 million. So, I don't think there's anyone in this room that would question and doubt that we are behind on our facilities maintenance. I'd say your roofs, you better make sure you have good roofs, because a lot of bad things happen when you don't have a good roof that cause, thousands of dollars of damage. And when I see this opportunity, and that's why I push for the meeting with Tom, and so we could see if we can get a little jump start on this thing, because it just gets us in the right direction. We have, in this year's budget, I agree with Kim, you don't, there's not even a lot of capital in the budget that starts July 1st.
No.
So that's why I'm trying to address our
So-
issues.
Brian, I'm not saying I'm gonna vote for your motion, but if that's what you're looking to do, is to spend 200,000 out of the projected surplus, I'd suggest a motion to that effect and request that the superintendent direct the business administrator to prepare a document to show where those fund transfers are gonna come from and to which line.
Okay. Well, that we can do that when the board's ready. I think that was where the board, we jumped, we went from Tom to Jeff. So now we're back. So if
Well, I think the fund transfer is, I mean, whether we need to prepare a document or not, I think, and the business administrators never appreciate when I do this, I think this is probably a conservative number. So I know you're worried about it going down to 1.5. I'm gonna say it's probably higher than this, sorry, than Jeff. but who knows? But I think there are some lines here that you know for sure that there's going to be that money will be available. Right, that salaries line's probably not gonna change much at all.
Too much, right.
Between now and the end of June. So if you were looking to transfer money out of the salary line to do something, that would be your prerogative.
But there's not one salary line. There's salary lines in 1,100, there's salary lines in 1,200. So I'm not gonna be comfortable saying I'm taking money out of the salary line, because there are salary lines. There should be a
You want to
specific.
specifically know
fund.
the
You're
line where we
transferring from a
find
line.
50,000.
Not from a category. That's why I'm saying there should be a preparation for the board to show specifically what lines, because that also is important to the budget committee. Because now you're taking $200,000, and when BudCom looks at it, they're gonna say, oh, you spent this much in salaries. Well, no, you didn't, because you transferred it from that line to that line.
Yeah, we decreased it and put it over here.
If I could finish, right? So perhaps, and I would have recommended that they come out of the line that is not special ed, that the salaries that if you could see, depending on how much they were looking for you to transfer, and you could tell them it's coming out of this line, all of it, right now, not out of a series of a bunch of lines. But again, that's your prerogative. But I think there are places here where it's very predictable that you would have the money available if you so chose to do what we're talking about. And I think the business administrator, I don't want to put words in your mouth or say, I think you could probably do it today or at the next meeting if you needed to, or whatever. So, I mean, that's up to the board.
If I'm not at the
Thank you.
table at some point for a period of time, I can take a look and maybe propose something before the end of the meeting, and perhaps we can take a look at it then. What's more important to me, and I appreciate where it's coming from, what's more important to me is to make sure that this policy is waived, because in prior years, and it would be a request from audit to put something like a $100,000 roof replacement on our fixed asset schedule. Now, they've softened up on that, and I'm happy about that. I'm very pleased with that, but I want to make sure that we don't run afoul of our fixed asset policy that we have in place right now. That's my biggest concern.
Then we need to look at the policy about waiving policies, which I don't have my policies with me tonight.
It's in your packet.
Is it in?
Because you talked about waiving policy, second read on policies. So I put the waiving of policies in your packet.
Don't go too far.
At the back of policies, there's two, there's one adoption, and
yeah.
so there's one that you'll waive, and the other one that is the waiving of policy.
Waiving a policy. Only when all the following conditions have been met, the proposed policy to be waived has been publicly announced to the school board at least 1 week prior to the school board's vote. So we cannot waive the policy tonight.
That's just for funding it, though. I mean, having Mr. Geary with a directive that, yeah, in the future, we're gonna meet this policy, we're gonna adopt the changes, we're gonna move the line transfers. That's logistics of making it happen. The question is we should direct, at least I think that we should direct him to go get the bids for these three, have them come back, then we can know what the really dollar amount is. We could be maybe transferring 4.25 as the total sum, or 375, until we get those hard figures. But then that's where we would address all of these issues to make it logistically happen to approve those particular projects.
So we don't run out of time.
I would suggest that we ask Mrs. Belcher on the next agenda to put waiver of policy
You
BGF.
just announced it at your meeting, like Jen did at the last meeting, so you're gonna waive another policy. She asked about DAF, I'm jumping ahead. And then she said that she put the board on notice that they'll be asking the board to waive the second read. That qualifies as letting the board know a week in advance. It was done at a public meeting. That's why you can waive the DAF one tonight later.
Okay.
Well, even so, the next sentence, sorry, Jen, the next sentence below that, in case of emergency meetings or justifiable situations, we could argue that because of the
It's a
timeline.
justifiable situation.
Because of the timeline. That's just-
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree with Sean, we can say that this is what we're gonna do. We don't need to make this move of transfer of funds today.
Oh, no, I agree with that, yeah.
We would like to announce today,
We're waiving.
at our next meeting, we will be looking to waive policy DID.
That needs to be
Yes.
part of the official minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow. I hope the
Official.
roof goes
It's
better than this.
official.
So is everybody in agreement that we should have Mr. Geary go get these three bids for these three projects for the three
For the
replacements of
roofs,
roofs?
yep.
Absolutely.
Now, for the next meeting in 2 weeks, because in talking with the manufacturer's rep, it would take about 2 weeks to get a good specification to be able to bid this out.
Okay.
Unless we're talking about
I know.
I guess you could give us an update in 2 weeks.
Waive policy DJE, and I can get 3 quotes from 3 qualified vendors, I might be able to do something like that, but
That's what you want to do.
going to a sealed bid process, it's gonna take time to develop those specs.
So should we be announcing that we will be looking to waive policy DJE at the next meeting as well?
Yes.
I can bring 3 quotes from qualified contractors to the next meeting. And then at that time that you want to waive it, and, we can get going on getting a purchase order and a contract in place.
So can we add that to the minutes then, that
Yep.
we?
Okay. All right, is that it?
Sounds good.
Ron?
I
Thank you.
think both of those agenda items are all set.
I guess, anybody else have any else for,
I have something, so that whether it involves Tom or not, that we had a brief conversation about this, Sean, today, which it's on this topic. This board has to get together and have a facilities meeting. Now, you know what we're doing.
Workshop, and we need
The
to do
workshop.
goals.
So we got to do this sooner than later, and we need a quorum, and it'd be great if Tom Gary was there.
You had a few dates that you had on that.
Yeah.
So when you populate your spreadsheet, everyone has the access to go in and see on a regular, in live time as to what they are. So we're just waiting for the chair to call a meeting.
okay,
Based on
I'm
that
sorry, I
information.
didn't realize that. I thought it would basically, the way that I've always been told is when the meeting's gonna happen afterwards.
Yeah, because I
So
think there's
I didn't know that you were looking for me to make that decision.
We are, because I think there are a couple of 6 meetings, so if it was just one, but I don't know.
Okay,
what
I
your-
apologize, and that was my fault. I will take ownership of that.
Well, we're here. See if you can set that thing up, I'm telling you. With the clock ticking and everything.
Somebody can look at the availability right now. If
Yeah,
somebody
I don't
wants to.
remember which one I
I don't have the link. We've had so many ones.
I have
float
it.
around. Can you?
Do, excellent.
Is that on here?
I'm sure I have it, but.
Anywho,
So then you have to weigh in on if it's 21st, 22nd, 23rd, SAU overlap.
Well,
with,
It
yeah.
looks like the
First date is the 14th, which is gone. The next time you have 5 is the 22nd of May.
We had that as an SAU meeting too, didn't we?
No, that's the SAU meeting is the 21st.
what are you doing Monday
But
night?
you just polled for 2 more other dates, the 20th.
I know, but I think the 23rd, is gonna be the date of the SAU meeting.
And then the
Yeah.
next date that there's 6 is the 29th of May.
You got budget, can 5 people show up here Monday night?
I cannot.
I
You
can.
cannot, that's budget committee.
You have a
Monday
budget
night.
committee meeting.
That'll be 10
Why
minutes.
don't we do it Wednesday?
I'm actually.
I'm going-
I'm
it's
out
all
of-
doing
I'm
this
out of
in a-
state Monday through Wednesday.
7:30 maybe,
I
because
have
that'll
planned
probably a
time
half
off.
hour meeting.
Tom's not gonna be here Monday through Wednesday.
I'm out Monday through Wednesday, and
Okay.
I'm actually out of the office.
Thursday,
And I
Can't
just
do it
announced that
Thursday,
publicly.
there's probably gonna be an SAU meeting on Thursday.
the 23rd?
Yes.
I don't
And
have
the
that on my
22nd,
calendar.
what was wrong with the 22nd?
It hasn't been posted yet.
22nd, I
That
don't
looked
believe
like that
Tom.
was-
Wednesday, May 22nd would be the other
So-
date.
That's a
Tom's
Wednesday.
not
here.
in town.
Tom's not here,
So it's
okay?
gonna have to be the 29th.
29th,
The 29th, what is that?
For a workshop.
Wednesday, the
Wednesday?
29th.
Well-
Wednesday, the 29th?
Other than that, you don't
I'm
have a
not gonna be
quorum.
Bruins. Okay.
The workshop.
But I think you had 5 or 6.
Exactly.
How many are,
People make it the 29th?
how many people
down
are
there?
yes for the 29th?
6.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Don't want you-
29th it
29th
is.
it is, calls for the work session.
That's a work.
6 or 7, what do you want to
That's a
do?
work session?
At what time?
I'm gonna say 7 because
care.
sometimes we find out
Okay.
even 7's hard.
You want it
What's the
here?
topic?
Yeah, if
What
we
are
can do it
doing
here,
for
that'd be
facilities?
the best.
You want
I'm
it?
gonna be here,
Yeah.
that's the one I have been trying to get.
Do you need it for a work
Yeah,
session?
I don't know if we normally film them, but I wouldn't care.
All right.
And if, Mr. Chair, if I may, if there's any specifics you want me to cover in that workshop, something else I can be prepped. But I'll do my
Okay,
best.
no, I would do that. All right, so the 29th is the workshop on this topic. All right? Once again, I apologize for that.
That's right.
All right. Business consultant,
Wow, we just killed 2 birds with 1 stone. We're rocking and rolling, huh?
don't jinx us. Nick,
How's it going?
I know that you weren't here, so I was gonna give you an opportunity to give us your update.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, so starting off on Thursday night, the kindergartners at Atkinson Academy got to perform skits, songs, and poems in English and Spanish at the PAC for their families, which was delightful. So really great job to the kids who were really just amazing and brave on stage. It was really great to see. Also, the Atkinson Academy 4th and 5th graders participated in a musical theater night on Monday, which featured various musical numbers from different shows, and it was extremely impressive to say the least. So great job, Atkinson Academy. The Danville 4th and 5th grade orchestra had their spring concert last Wednesday, which not only sounded great, but the students demonstrated great musicianship and really just showed off the school's core values, which was wonderful to see. Danville Elementary kindergartners also got to perform their Spanish and English skits at the PAC on Monday, which was fantastic as well. On Wednesday, June 8th, Pollard School will be having their annual Bike and Walk to School Day, where around 200 students participate. It was always a great time growing up with my friends. We always got to do it on those days. It was awesome. Just a quick reminder, just make sure all the students have helmets on. There can be some dangers, obviously, with that, so that's always something to look out for. And Pollard School kindergartners got to perform in their musical at the PAC, which went extremely well, and they also got to perform other songs and skits for the audience as well, which was great. This year at Sandown North, the students who took part in Jump Rope for Heart and Hoops for Heart raised $6,753 for the American Heart Association, which is really it's a tremendous accomplishment for the whole school. So not only congratulations, but thank you. And in the past 6 years, the school has raised over $34,000, which is just astonishing. At Sandown Central, the students there will be having their field day on June 6th, which is sure to be a fun-filled day for everyone involved. So have a great time, guys. And at the middle school, I got some field trips coming up. The 6th grade class will be going on their Boston field trip in June. The 7th grade science classes will be going to the Rocky Shores field trip next week. And in June, the 7th grade will also be going to Camp Tricklin Falls, where they'll end the year with some great team building and fun. The 8th grade will also be traveling to the Financial Literacy Fair in Portsmouth in June, and Canopy Lake Park the following week. So those are going to be great trips for the students, and I know they're all looking really forward to it. Obviously, senior prom is tomorrow, as I mentioned before, or I didn't mention before, but senior prom is tomorrow. Everyone's really excited, but we got to watch a very informative and obviously alerting video today. We had a senior meeting. It was called, you have to help me. Fatal Reality. And it obviously opened eyes for a lot of people. And just a reminder to anyone attending the prom, because I know it doesn't just go with the seniors. Be safe. It's a fun time, but the things that could happen, it's just really take priority. No life is worth all the partying in the world. Just really that's something that I have to reiterate. Going on May 22nd, the Little Buddy Big Buddy Day will be going at the high school. On May 23rd, the seniors will go on their annual cruise, and on the same day, the New Hampshire Scholars will have their field trip to a Fisher Cats game. Really exciting end of the year.
Nice and busy, too.
Yeah, very.
Thank you for the update. Okay, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is transportation update.
That's on the template now, we just leave it on there, on every agenda.
Yeah, I know, it seems that way.
I've been looking for it.
Ask him.
I'll tell them to send one your way.
Nick, did you win tonight?
No, we lost.
Oh,
it was
sorry.
it was hard fought, but they were a little bit trash talky, so it got a little bit But I'm amazed how respectful we were. I mean, throughout this whole season, it's been really great to see. Oh yeah, no, it's like ever since Mr. Blaster came in, it's just been completely reformed. So great, yeah.
Who are you playing?
We played Londonderry today, so we got 2 more games, and we'll see where we're at for playoffs. Yeah, no, it's we're doing great this year. I'm very excited.
All right. Welcome back.
Okay, all set. Good evening, Sandy Hotchkins, Transportation Coordinator. just want to, first of all, thank you. Thank Dr. Metzler and thank the board for giving me this opportunity to actually look at bus routes in a little different light and present these hybrid routes to you of what they would look like if we were to be able to put some high school stops or students onto a middle school bus to help save time. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. So first of all, I'd like you to take a look at the data. I have updated the left side, which is the current year, so those might not look totally the same as what you got previously in the year because there have been updates. So I included them in there just for the purpose of having the correct times. So on the right side, first what I did, and I believe the board did get the Atkinson routes and the Danville routes, as that was all that I was able to do in the last 2 weeks. So that's where the data is. So I first did the routes as they would have been done and did some updates on them that I would normally do. So those times are there for the AM and the PM. I included the live stop time, which is when they are actually from the first student pickup to the time they get to the school in the afternoon, from the school to the last drop-off. So that's what those times are. The travel time is after the last pickup in the morning, traveling to the school. That's the time there, and the afternoon is from the school to the first stop, just so you understand that. So the total time is really what we're looking at, because that's the total time that students are on the bus. So in the column that says time savings with the MS middle school, that is where we can actually save more time if we put some of the high school stops onto a middle school bus. So I want to take a look at that. I want to show you, you have the actual routes that were done, but this is the map, and this is Atkinson. So you'll see up on the left, top left corner, that high school bus has already, the orange section, the orange dots that you see are the stops that I was able to change in the route itself to save some time. So that means not going down a street. Up on 111, it's actually Lakeside Drive. On Main Street, there's Pope Road. So those were things that were already included into the route. So the red outline areas that you see on the map is where we would take off sections of the high school students to ride onto a middle school bus. So in doing that, the bus 118 on the north side would go down to 27 minutes. Bus 106, taking out all of the North Salem Road and Shannon Road area, would save a lot of time. Those students be on a middle school bus, and it would be about a 30-minute run. On the other side for bus 117, actually I was able to save some time just by starting in a different area and going up Walker Road first and then out Summit. So that in itself had saved some time. But if I'm able to take off the upper Maple Ave and put those on the middle school bus, and there's not a lot of students there, and reroute it to go right down Coventry, so that bus would end up being a 30-minute run. Now, we have to remember that the high school students that are going onto the middle school bus are going to get to high school, to the school at 7:10. That is mostly if there are CTE students on the high school riding onto the middle school bus. If they're not riding, then the middle school bus can go to the high school between 7:10 and 7:15. and they would be okay to get to class on time. So those things I won't know until I get the students, but normally it's seniors who take that first CTE bus, so I don't think it would be much of a problem.
Can you, Sandy, just for the edification of the board, just to explain the CTE bus and what time it leaves and the reason why we have to factor that in? Just,
Yep.
to make sure everybody's aware, because we
Yeah,
glaze over it sometimes. But
The CTE bus obviously is the bus that takes our vote kids to Salem. It has to leave at 7:10 to get there on time. And then that bus comes back, has to be on time to start their elementary run. So it's important that all the students are on their bus at 7:10.
Could I just ask a question, looking at, that map's a little condensed there. Being from Atkinson and knowing some of these roads, I'm just curious, removing on that 118 route there, are those, removing those, are those putting kids on those main roads having to cross?
No, they don't cross up in that area.
And on Pope, that 121 on Pope,
They wouldn't be, they cross in the afternoon.
they'll be crossing Main Street in the afternoon?
We do have some crossovers on Main Street. The only thing that would be good with this is that if there are students in that area that don't want to walk up, they actually could ride a middle school bus.
Okay.
So there's still opportunity for them to get picked up at their house. The reason I did that is because there's not a lot of high school students that normally ride. So if you're going down a street for one or two students, it's taking up a lot of time. I would prefer to have them ride the middle school bus. Any other questions for Atkinson? I think it worked pretty well. The next scenario is for Danville. So Danville, I was able to look at this again and save some time. The dark orange loop there is actually for bus 108 because I realized that their time was 44 minutes, and if I use either the G.H. Carter or the Walker Road area and put them on middle school buses, and there's not a lot of students up in there, but it is about a 6 or 7 minute loop. So there is more time savings for bus 108, just so you know. So bus 109, which is the bus to the north with the two circles, there's two middle school buses on each of those. So if I take those off for those students to ride middle school, and again, there's not a lot. We're talking maybe 2 to 5 kids, high school kids. So it makes sense. And with taking that off of 109, I was able to add a different section that was actually on 108 on Hampstead Road, so that 108 can just make the straight line down Colby Road, and actually Hawkwood as well, because right now it's doing a double loop, going down, turning around, and going back out. So that will save some time there as well. So, I tried to look at it first, what can actually be saved, and then how much more we can save by adding the students to the middle school bus. But when I looked at Danville, I want to explain there's a unique situation, because Danville has 3 high school buses and 3 middle school buses. So in taking students from high school and putting them on a middle school bus, we're adding a little more, not stress, but a little extra time on those 3 buses, who also need to be, have time improvement, in my opinion, on their runs. So if we look at the middle school, this is the middle school runs as they are right now. There are 3 middle school buses, and there is 1 Sandown bus that does the Colby Road area for middle school. So I did not include them. And the red circles, again, are the middle school areas that high school kids would be riding. So my suggestion would be, since I've already cut out most of bus 109, which is a high school bus, is take that other short area that they actually have, and let those kids also ride a middle school bus. So I would like to take 109, make it a middle school bus. don't know if you're following me, it's hard for me to explain everything, I'm sorry. So 109 would be a middle school bus, which would make 4 middle school buses in Danville. So these are the current routes, but if we change it and add those 4 buses, they would be shorter runs for middle school. That make sense?
Then are you decreasing the high school bus to 2?
To 2, but their runs are also decreased already. But because we're decreasing them, we're adding more onto the middle school, so we need to have more area covered.
This would be a little bit more of a combined bus situation than what we just saw for Atkinson.
We're already
Because
putting
of the
the circle,
areas.
the red circle areas anyway on a middle school bus from the high school. So the only other area that would be added is the Beach Plain Road, Diamond Drive area, and there's not a lot of high school kids in there either.
Oh, that's the furthest route, that's where I live.
And those are the
That
furthest,
takes
yeah.
forever to get out there.
Yep. So
Got 2
here we
buses
would.
with no kids.
So here we would cut down that route considerably. I don't have the actual minutes and everything for you because I wasn't able to project that route, but I just wanted to let you know that, looking at it, that I think that's a good option. And that's where I would like to go with it. So, I'm not sure, there's really, it was a short time that I had to do this and a lot of thinking. But, I really truly believe that if we can have some of those high school students be placed on the middle school, and they have the option if, if parents don't want them to be on the middle school, they can meet them at another stop, I did already have some calls, and even one came to my office today that, concerns for her middle schooler going to school next year and wondering what the routes would look like, and concerned on the length. And she actually lives in a far-out area in Atkinson, and, I over the last 10 years or so, I've talked with parents. I've worked with them and, so I told her I would do my best, those ones in the outlying area, to still not have to be the longest route to school and the longest route from school. So at some point, they would be in the middle. So right now, Atkinson Middle School, the way it is actually pretty good, and that's what I told her. And I said if it stayed that way, it really wouldn't affect her.
Okay, Jen?
I really appreciate the work that you put into this, Sandy, and I think if parents know that they do have the option, because I am thinking, there are some middle school kids who I know about right now who will be high school kids in the fall, and they will be looking to have to cross some of those main roads, which I'm not sure how every parent would feel about that. I know I would be concerned about that. So from the point of view of a parent, knowing that if that was a concern of mine, that there is the option to ride that middle school bus so that they wouldn't have to do that would certainly, I think, give me a little bit of comfort.
Sure, I can understand that. And unfortunately, we do have roads that the
Yeah.
students do cross. And
But
the
for
drivers.
parents, if the parents are able to be there, that's
Yeah.
fine. Sometimes they can't. If they have
Yeah.
a younger one at home and that's,
Yep.
so I think knowing that that option's available is
Absolutely.
nice. Thank you.
And this data set is just showing, we're saving anywhere from 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes
Yeah.
on these runs. That's a considerable amount.
Those are the outlying areas, so,
Wait,
Tremendous amount of work here. You've done a lot of work. It's good work. And if anyone knows the roads and routes best, it's you. I'm all about maximizing what we pay for in our vendors, and I can't help but notice, they put a proposal in here, and they showed us the value that they would deliver, and our cost is zero, which is great. What role did First Student play in this?
this,
but they're gonna be doing I believe we agreed that they were gonna be looking at next year's.
Okay, so that's gonna be apart from this hybrid model. We're gonna see something separate from them?
Sure, Mr. Chair, if I may, can I, if it pleases the board, let me just, like the opportunity to share 3 options. I think we can go from here. And it's really in the effort to prepare for the 1920 school year, because Sandy would normally begin this work 2-3 weeks ago, right? So I have 3 options if the board, if it pleases the board for action. So the first option would be to proceed with Sandy's options for the combination of middle school, high school busing as presented on February 22nd. However, we advised against that due to logistical concerns on the campus. So, of our opinion, not to proceed with that. However, I respect the board's decision on that. Option number 2 would be to wait for first student's assessment, as you just alluded to, but that's not due until June 15th, right? So we're really up against the wall with that timeline, and we would have to run with that scenario, basically, quote-unquote, out of box, right? With little time to refine those routes. And I presented option 3 as proceeding with this hybrid approach, where Sandy identifies, where we can add students onto certain buses in the outlying areas to save that time, and I do believe that it falls within the spirit of, the vote you took back in December, and just looking for a little closure on this so we can just, start on the work preparing for the school year next year.
Kim?
At our last meeting, first student said they could have that information in 2 weeks. Why is it now June 15th?
I was under the impression it was June
No.
15th.
It said June 15th.
No, it was 2 weeks.
I don't believe it was. They said that they could not do that. I remember that he had talked about the earliest he could possibly do it. And I know that Sandy had talked about she could produce what she could within a 2-week period. But I do not recall, and I don't think the minutes reflect that they would be doing that.
If I recall,
Yeah.
Sandy's directive was 2 weeks, and she's, been working really hard at that. And I thought that there was a little pushback from Colton, because I think he had other clients, and then there was other
I
work
think he had to
involved.
finish up by June 15th because he was moving on to something else.
That's correct, okay.
Yes, that rings a bell.
Okay, Sarah?
So my concern with waiting until June 15th, and we have to run, as you said, run with it out of the box. What happens if the routes aren't safe? They're not, because you know the terrain, you know routes. Does that mean you would have to adjust everything in real time as parents were calling you with concerns, and you'd have to pull people in and literally do stuff?
It mostly would be because we wouldn't really have time to,
To
go
vet it.
To vet it.
Yeah.
And what would happen is, once school starts, that's usually when we would find out where there needs to be adjustments, and we would have to make them after school
And
starts.
that could end up leading to longer routes, inefficient routes, and things because of the time crunch.
Yep.
Right.
And there's no guarantee that what they produce is
It's
going
going
to
to be the
work.
best. I mean, everything that I've seen so far indicates that you are our best option as far as creating our routes. All of the work that you've done,
Thank
you
you.
know the roads, you know the routes, you know where the stops are and where kids have to cross and where they shouldn't cross. First student doesn't know that. They've said that a number of times.
And I'd like to
And
interject
I think
this.
it points out too that, you're asking a person that does not know the area. They're going by maps.
Sure.
And information that is already there, and they're trying to decipher it.
Yeah, I mean, they could look at my road where I live on North Ave and Main Street, and they could say, well, there's 3 kids that live on this side of the street, they can just go to the corner of North Ave and Main Street and and that way, the bus doesn't have to go
Yeah.
down North Ave and turn around and come back. Well, there's no way.
Can't do that.
You can't do that. Those kids get stuck.
I think I asked you that one year.
You did indeed. I'm thinking cello, saxophones, winter snow, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So you have, all the work you've put in shows how much more you know for our area and the safety of our kids. I'm very impressed with the hybrid model. I think that's a great compromise, and shows to be very, very efficient in a number of ways. And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Sheila?
Actually, these 2 are up.
I'm just going to go right around.
Oh, okay.
All 3 of you there.
A ton of work, and I thank you very much. But I can't help but notice that you kind of lit up when you gave us this. As you were explaining this, this is the first time I've actually seen you smile, almost, giving us this.
Well, it gave
Is
me an
it something
opportunity
that
to look
you're,
at it.
no, is it something that this hybrid model that you can actually see and get behind.
I believe so. I'm
It
I'm
looks good.
100% good for this I think I mean, I've heard the board what you want, and I think this is one way to present that, without too many changes at the
Exactly.
school levels,
Right.
at the traffic level, or anything else.
It's a good compromise.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Lee?
Please don't misinterpret what I was saying before, you know. It's not that I think First Student can do a better job than you. It's always good, one, we're paying for the service, so why not take advantage of it? And it's always good to get a fresh outside perspective to look at a problem, to come at it from a different angle, something that, when you're looking at to solve a problem, you've been staring at it for how many years? Sometimes you miss certain opportunities, and when you have an outside set of eyes, they may present something, they may be totally off the mark, and you can look at it and say, boom, 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 there are the holes in your plan. But there may be that one sliver, that one nugget that you say, look at that. So that's my only point in driving the vendor to deliver what.
And we did get that nugget from out of them.
And to that point, when I was doing this, I looked at their scenarios that they did, and also used some of that information. So,
Jen?
Maybe you can refresh my memory, because I'm trying to remember. So what First Student was going to come back with by June 15th, or whatever that date was their version of some kind of hybrid model, no?
No.
Their task was to provide you with middle school, high school.
Combining.
Combined.
Combined, okay. And so this hybrid that you put together was based on the current routes that we have, the roads that you know, and then some of those discussions we had last week where they did point out the outlying areas, which we all know about, you know, in the towns that we live in, but also some of the turnaround spots, and so, okay.
yep. And I'm working now with the data for next year. I've already moved the students up, their grades. So I'm looking at real-time data.
I feel like we're in a good place. I feel like we're all.
So the data that we had on the first one that had the time reductions on that, is that this year's data?
That had to be based off of this year's,
Okay.
the one that I did for you?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
but it would not look that much different.
Yeah, and
except for stops taken out or some added.
Okay. So with that though, I mean, you did 2 of the 4 towns, which is, you know, we understand that the workload of getting that done in 2 weeks, but it was basically illustrated that there is some major time reductions that we can get by doing this hybrid model. And I think we would be safe to say that the other 2 towns, if you were to do that, would illustrate that point as well.
I believe so.
Okay. Kim?
That being said, I would still like First Student to come back with those in June or July, because I think it was helpful for you when you were looking at this hybrid, and there might be more that can be done with that. So are we gonna arrange to have them back the middle of June? I'd still like to see what they have for a combined roads.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So because we were looking to, you know, Sandy to start the work for the planning in September, for September, could we take what they're going to present on June 15th and just use that as part of the toolbox? I guess what we're looking for is closure tonight, so we can start planning.
Yes,
right?
I want to see what that data looks like, because
June 20th, right?
we've been asking for it.
So the second meeting in June, have them?
And First Student.
That's what I mean.
For student,
yeah.
yes, because I don't want to just not
Yeah, let
let
them
this
off the
go
hook.
without ever seeing the data that it was.
No, I think
that
we
requested.
definitely want to see the data to show what the analysis is done, but I think, you know, it's either going to be the hybrid method or the complete combined. If First Student comes in there with some kind of presentation that shows that, you know, we would only go that rate if it was able to show that it was superior to what you've come up with already, which probably it won't.
Speak to that. Can I just interject before you, Sandy? And I'm going to say, because Sandy probably will be modest with it, the amount of times they've had to call Sandy for advice on their modeling would shock you. So
We should keep track of those hours and we should bill them accordingly.
But what I want to say is that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine, you go ahead.
What I want to say is that, again, he's working out
He's in
there.
Missoula, Montana.
It's going to be, it's different when I turn everything over to Chandra, who's the local person, and she does the routing after it's all, we're going to set it up together, and then she is the first student rep that's going to take over, continuing the routing.
She was helping you during, for these?
We talked about things, yes,
Good.
absolutely, because we know the roads.
So with this, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion.
Oh, you stole my motion.
To move forward with the hybrid model,
Second.
okay, thank you. For the bus routes.
Okay, motion is made, seconded by Jen. Any further discussion? Just so, I want to make sure that we're all clear, we do want this data from
Yeah,
first
we
student.
we
We're gonna
can,
put that
yeah.
on.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure that this doesn't stop them from doing their work and stuff, and we're all in
No, and
agreement.
the understanding is that data will be presented, but
You want
Okay.
Mr. Colton and Mr. Fairweather, you want the same
We'll add it to the
combination?
toolbox. I mean, that's great for us, so.
Oh, okay. Any further? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
But that's not to say that if we get this data and it shows you're saving 20 minutes, that, that we may not look at it again. That's what, I think that's what we're gonna say. I mean,
If anything, we're on a path to fix a lot of this delay, and the way that at least I would look at it is that even if we went to this hybrid model for 1 year, because the data set we get from first student is this great epiphany, the best one is like, wow, we're all gonna sit here in shock and awe. If that happens, and we don't have the time to implement that by September, then we would, you could do this at the following year, because we know that the next year, you're gonna have the movement of students, that it's not gonna change that much. So,
Yeah, no, I agree, and to your point, you're gonna look at the data, you have to compare and contrast and have your discussion. The hybrid version is the least disruptive, primarily because we can do what we're doing. That other model, if it saved you time, it may not, there might be other things that have to
no,
be mitigated.
and we bring
that's-
them on up and talk
yeah,
about it.
So, that's, okay.
And the point of my motion is to allow Sandy to get started and get her work done in a timely manner, so it doesn't back her up for special ed, for the summer program and everything like that. Obviously, I know we're gonna look at the data that comes back in June, but like you were saying, Sean, if it highlights something and we don't have time to implement it, there's always next year. And it gives you more time to figure out the best way to include that in the next year's routes. Yeah, but this way, at least you're able to move forward and get started and do some work. You know what your direction is.
I'm gonna vote against it, not because I don't like model, I love it, I think it's great, but I've shared with you all where I stand on combining of buses and all that, so. It doesn't affect Sandown, and the feedback I hear from Sandown is they didn't wanna combine buses, and this doesn't impact it, but still, for that base, I'm gonna vote against it.
I thought Sandown wasn't done yet.
Didn't do the roof yet.
Correct. But I'm still just in essence of the motion to move forward with the hybrid model.
But it will impact Sandown.
Not yet.
Yeah, she only did 2 of the 4
You need
towns.
to do all 4 routes.
All
4
all
towns.
the towns will be hybrid.
Correct, but what we're seeing tonight doesn't reflect any hybrid, just yet.
For Sandown.
Because,
No,
yeah, she
'cause they're
did
not
2
done.
of the 4 towns.
Yes, I know.
Over the 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Okay.
Brian?
I'm going to vote for the motion, as I think the overall mission here was to increase efficiencies. So it looks to me like through a lot of work from you and a lot of effort here from certain board members over the last, 6 or 12 months, there's been a lot of stuff accomplished. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to vote.
And we're also going to support that. The sum of all the 8 minutes and 12 minutes time periods will far exceed for all the students combined, more time than we put into this. So they're the ones that are going to be the beneficiaries of this. So with that said, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed?
In favor of what, though?
In favor of the motion?
Motion.
To go to the
All
hybrid
right,
model.
all right, okay. That's what happens when it takes so long.
I know it's.
This has been very painful for Brian.
All right, so that was
Thank you, Sandy.
No, I
all
thank you
your
all.
work.
7,
Thank you, Sandy, very
1,
much.
0.
Thank you.
710,
Right,
all right.
710.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Nice job. Hey, and have
Are you
fun,
gonna
have
call
fun
me
tomorrow.
back again for a visit
Earl,
sometime?
Rachel, if you could.
Only if you try to put a
Or a
stop
bus
at
ride.
North Ave and Main Street.
Prior to that, I mean, if we're gonna get to the 15th, we should probably be able to see it.
Oh, we want the date about the
Thank
15th.
you.
You should have it in your
Leave the
package.
cookies.
Yeah, just so that we can see it beforehand.
Leave the cookies, you know.
All right. Where'd my agenda go? General assurances.
Jeff was going to do that.
Great. Jeff was, hey, Tom, can you tell Jeff we're on general assurances? Okay, I can speak quickly to it while we wait for Jeff to come down. You know, as the Department of Ed has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years, Commissioner has done some nice work with auditing programs and lunch providers and those sorts of things. We've had several audits here, special ed, some of our programs. Part of those changes really was this general assurances. Last year, if you remember, the school board chair and the superintendent both had to sign the general assurances. They've changed that form again. So there was a lot of questions, and I spoke to the chairman about this, and my job now is to just share the general assurances with you. I still have to sign it. And so this document that you have that was shared with you is really the general assurances. If you had specific questions about the general assurances, I would ask Mr. Dowd really to respond to them. It basically, you know, whether they're federal grants or whatever the grants may be, there's like rules and regulations that we have to follow, and this is just that assure that we are following all those rules. As we said, we've had several favorable audits in this regard, but that's what this document is, so that I made it more official in terms of an agenda item to share with the board, and then to go ahead and sign it and get this on to the folks at the Department of Education. So, Tom, were you able to find him? Jeff? Oh, there he is, right there.
Sitting there the whole
I just popped
time.
up, I was like, "Where's Waldo?" Like,
No,
what?
we're not.
Far away.
Were you there the whole time?
He was not.
He just blended in.
Oh my gosh. It freaked me out.
That's crazy. Did you have any questions about the general assurances?
Question how he popped in the room so
I
anonymously.
know, right?
Jeez.
Okay, I guess I have no direct any questions directly, but I don't know if we'll give an opportunity to the board to ask any questions. If nobody has any questions, I guess we'll move on.
So we'll, I'll sign that, pass that on, and we can.
Thank you.
Do this shared.
Thanks for coming down, Jeff.
Yeah,
Don't,
we're assured by general assurances.
next.
Everyone's assured.
policies is next.
Teleport again? Let Tom get you again. Okay. Kevin Lee?
You're up, Lee.
I'm up. All right. So we have, you want me to do it? That's fine. We have 6 policies in front of you for first read, but I want to talk about them individually. So KED, IKF, JLC, and JLCD. Those are just pretty standard changes based on NHSBA recommendations, and there was one in here for which is IKF, which is modified due to SB 157. So I'd like to present those before I talk about the others for, actually I'll do JLCK as well for first read. JLCK is a new policy. We didn't have it as a school board policy, and it's been now added in, and we're looking to submit those 5 for first read tonight.
I'll make a motion to accept the first read tonight.
Motion has been made
Second.
and
So
seconded.
just on the first 5, right?
Just on the first 5.
So it's
Majority.
everything except DAF.
Correct.
Okay.
So IKF now should, this one went back and forth. I just want to make a comment because they did a lot of work on this one, getting all those numbers and those credits to add up. And so that should all align now with the program of studies, looking at math-intensive courses for high school graduation and in different levels of diploma.
Who seconded that, Mr. Chair?
I seconded that, Jen.
Thank you.
Jen did. Okay, somebody else have anything else they'd like to add? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous.
All right, and DAF We'd actually like to request that we immediately adopt this. So waive the first read and immediately adopt this. This has to do with the administration of federal grant funds. It is a new and required policy.
That is actually 10 policies rolled up into one policy.
Yes. It's almost the whole document that we have.
I'm sure
in the whole packet.
everybody went home after the last meeting and spent a good amount of time reading all of this very intently.
Did you talk about this last meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
we did.
Yes, you very
I
well.
handed it out ahead of time.
All right, so was that you making that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Oh,
second.
Can you say it again?
What I said
Motion to
before.
Waive,
Waive
Three,
policy
yeah.
and adopt policy DAF.
so you're waiving
First
BGB.
read.
Yes.
I got it. Did you have a second for that?
Jen.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. Did we talked about how this was going to be structured within our policy manual as separate because it was federal, addressing federal funds? Is that what we had decided upon?
Right, and I think that one of the questions that I had was that there are a number of policies here that, of sub-policies, right, that potentially impact other areas in which we already have policies. But I think that at the end of the day, the only way that you really keep it organized is to say, look, if it's an administration of federal grant funds, everything is under this policy. So I think it'll be its own standalone policy, and there was some talk by the New Hampshire School Boards Association who developed this model policy, which I then used to tailor to our district, and that perhaps they would be pulling these out and meshing them a little bit with our own, with the existing policy number scheme. But I think this is a pretty organized way, and I think that we'll find in the future they may just stick with this, so liaison policy, and there's a couple, accompanying procedure that we already have in place as well.
Thank you.
Okay. No other further questions? Call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed and abstained? Unanimous. Okay. All right, guess we're done. Administrator reports.
Excellent, thank you, Sean. Materials in the board packets, you'll notice there's an executive summary on bank services. I believe, hey Kathy, there's an executive summary also on the disability bank.
It is, I handed that up, it was
Okay, so
on
that-
top of their folders.
So that was on
Didn't
top of
make
your
it in-
folder, so you have a couple of executive summaries to take a look at. Bank services for one, and disability bank, that request came in later today. So I thank Nancy Lewis-Sal for pulling that together on short notice. Procedure forms, JIC R and JIC X, that's a procedure and an actual form reflecting the suggested changes by the school board. These updated procedures have been posted to our website. Also announcing our annual retirement celebration invitation. That is scheduled for June 12th. We're asking board members to RSVP by May 22nd. Great opportunity for the board members to show their appreciation for our retiring staff members, decades of devotion and service to Timberlane Regional School District. Typically, a member from the school board could be the chair, could designate. You have an opportunity to speak at the actual celebration and congratulate. Sue has done it in the past, I think other people have, so we're looking forward to that. In the area of student achievement, Kylie Simmons scored her 100th goal during the May 6th girls lacrosse game against Manchester Central and executed her 110th goal by the end of the week on May 10th as a game versus Bishop Girton. She's the second person in program history to achieve this, so I'd like to send our congratulations to Kylie. We have a teacher award acknowledgement on April 12th in Concord, New Hampshire. The New Hampshire Music Educators Association awarded Timberlane's own Louise Bears-Pajak with their Distinguished Music Educator of the Year award. The award was presented at the organization's spring all-member meeting and was presented by New Hampshire Music Educators President Heidi Welch, as well as board members Kenneth Clark from Timberlane, Andrea Von Onion from Oyster River, who's also a Timberlane graduate and former student of Mrs. Pajak. Mrs. Pajak has taught at Timberlane for over 40 years. She's an outstanding educator. She teaches orchestra and many other music classes at both the middle school and high school. I can even, from a personal thing, I feel like every time I've gone to one of her performances, I learned something that I didn't know. You know, she teaches, she performs, she's outstanding. So we'd like to congratulate Mrs. Pajek on certainly a well-deserved award.
I second that.
And finally, summer hours. At the SAU board level, you've approved a 4-day summer work week. Hampstead has also done that, so I'm asking the Timberlane board to take action to look for a 4-day work week for summer again this year. Schedule benefits the custodial staff, the maintenance crews, by giving them complete access to the building on Fridays. And again, as I already indicated, the SAU board approved a 4-day work week for SAU staff, so it would keep both districts and the SAU kind of on the same schedule for the summer. So I'm just asking if the board would entertain that motion this evening.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Any just further discussion? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you very much.
Unanimous.
Appreciate your support. Personnel report. You good?
Yep.
Okay. Personnel report. Professional. We've had three resignations. Elizabeth Conte. She's a Sandown North elementary teacher. Sheila Gutelis. That's our Atkinson school nurse, and Emily Schultz, a speech language pathologist at our middle school. So three valued staff members that needed to resign for different reasons. I'm asking the board to take action on that this evening.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignations of Elizabeth Conti, Sheila, help me out. Catellis.
Alice, yeah.
And Emily Schultz,
Got it.
I'll second.
with gratitude and appreciation.
Motion is made. Was there a second? I'm sorry.
So,
Sue. Seconded. Any further discussion? Not, call for the vote. All those in favor? Unanimous?
The second part of this is the renominations. I think I explained this at our last meeting. As some staff were still awaiting certification and those sorts of things, credentials to come through. So we've had 2 renominations. Catherine Melch, which is she's a world language French teacher at our middle school, and Kira Lacoste, who's a science teacher at our high school. I'm asking if you would please take action and renominate them this evening for the 1920 school year.
Move to renominate Catherine Melch and Kira Lacrosse.
A second.
Motion made by Sue, seconded by Brian. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous?
And thank you very much. All set.
Okay, thank you. Any committee reports from the school board? Yep, we'll start there and just go right around the table.
The withdrawal committee met yesterday, was that yesterday?
That was yesterday.
Just yesterday. Yeah, I do remember.
Still yesterday.
Still yesterday. We had more discussion on a pro forma budget that ran out through 2022. We discussed some of the other information that we had in our packets from the last time. We took a vote as to whether or not that we would move forward with developing a withdrawal plan, and we are developing a withdrawal plan. Our next meeting is May 28th, so we hope to have at least a rough draft of most of the sections of that plan.
Nice. Jen?
Policy committee, we haven't met, I don't think, since last time the board met, but I have a note here for myself to get back in touch with New Hampshire School Board Association, unless, I don't know if they've been in touch with the SAU at all, where they're at. Okay, so I'll reach it back out to them.
Okay.
I did just attend the girls lacrosse game before I came here, and thank you for recognizing Kylie Simmons, and I hope you have another announcement about her next time. She's 1 goal away from, I think, a season high. I was hoping she would get that before the game ended tonight, but very close. Yeah.
How many more opportunities, how many more games?
1 more game, Concord,
Home or
away.
away?
Yeah,
Feed her to the ball.
she'll do it.
Lee?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Sheila?
nothing.
Brian? Nothing. Sue?
No committee reports, but I did want to make a report that I went to the middle school jazz band and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band concerts on Tuesday night. Unbelievably wonderful. Some solos, some combo groups, they combined some of the choral singers from the high school with the 7th and 8th grade band. It was unbelievable. It's just about an hour performance, so it's just a long enough performance, but they were just so proud of those kids. They're still making music. And I did want to mention that today at the softball game, it was senior day for the softball team, and they honored our good friend and Timberlane friend, Bill Cannell, played in honor of him. I don't know if they won or not. I left before the game really was. But anyway, it doesn't matter because they honored Bill, and I know the girls meant it wholeheartedly, particularly those seniors. So that was a nice tribute.
Okay.
We had a CNA meeting on the 7th. It was a good meeting. We're, closing on the end of the year. The one thing that we did do was we approved some teacher-driven curriculum changes in math from K through 12. These were all driven and done by our teachers during professional development and over the course of the year. They all collaborated very well together, identified some places where they wanted to see some changes. They presented those changes to us, and we pushed those through. It was just great to see and hear how much work the teachers have been doing together to improve the younger math curriculum, that K through 2 math curriculum. So that was the one thing we did. And then I was at the high school jazz band concert last night. Amazing concert. It was the last one of the year. Combo. They had a guest performer come down from Maine. They did a couple of his own pieces as well, which was just fabulous. And next week is the high school orchestra and band concerts as well. So again, it's a great night out. It's free. It's, the jazz band always has a smaller audience because it's a smaller group. So, but lots of cheers all around. It was just awesome. It was a little bittersweet because it was my son's last concert, so.
Congratulations.
Sorry, can I append to my?
Sure.
As far as the withdrawal committee, there is a public website that has a lot of information on it, and Jen and I are the board reps, so if you have any questions or comments in regards to that, we're looking towards moving towards a public hearing in August. So it will move along pretty quickly. So we are looking for input from the board because the board will, I'm not really sure if the board will need to vote before the public hearing or not. I don't know what, anyway, I'll find that out, but.
Attorney.
So you have a website that we can.
Yep, it's right on the front page of the
Okay.
district, under committees. It's the very top one. As soon as you hit that, it's very accessible.
I would just like to add to that. So this process is moving really fast just because it has to. And I think the committee has been working very well together, working really hard at a pretty quick pace. And one thing that came up in last night's meeting was, putting together some of this information. And I don't want to say it's put together in haste, but it's very quick. We have less than a week turnaround to get the information to Kathy, to get it to the meeting, to get it then posted. So, when you go through that, it's all good information that's there, and it's all information that I think we're going to be taking in to put together in a more formalized plan, but just to caution that it's not up there as, the information isn't there as a formalized end-all, be-all information.
Okay, one thing that I want to add is that I had forwarded off to the board as I was contacted by the attorney for the TSSU collective bargaining agreement, just notifying that they want to exercise that part of the contract that for collective bargaining, and so that process is going to start just like it was last year for the teachers. It's going to be for the parents this time, so I just wanted to make everybody aware of that, and we'll be forming a committee to move that process forward. So if you're interested in joining it, which some of you have already responded back without me actually asking for your, I'm going to ask that here. So if you're interested, serving on that committee, please let me know, and we'll move forward accordingly.
Don't we have the personnel committee? The personnel committee was the one that did the TTA contract, and that's me, myself, Kim, and Brian on the personnel committee.
Okay, but other people, I think, wanted to be added to that for this particular committee.
Right.
So what I wanted to do is find people's interest. If you're still interested in being on there, I would,
Okay. I don't know, do we need more than 3 people? I mean, that many voices in the committee doing the work, working with the lawyer? I'd have to review the policy, I apologize. It was,
You would want to go to 5, 'cause
no,
then you'd have a quorum.
because then you'd have a
Yeah.
quorum.
that we definitely
Yeah.
don't want to go down.
Yeah, yeah, don't want to go down that path.
Well,
So-
it depends when they're negotiating too, so
Yeah.
it doesn't always work in everybody's schedule to be here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so.
Yeah.
Those of us that can help, will help. Whatever way we can
Yeah,
help, we're here.
and
to
that's what
help.
I'm looking for, is just people that would look to serve on it, and
We don't do the negotiating, that's why we have.
Yeah,
Correct.
Shaughnessy, yeah.
It's nice to have us so we can report back to you what's going on.
correct, and.
You contacted our attorney, right?
I believe I
He was
copied
copied in his-
him on that notice, but I will reach out to Mr. O'Shaughnessy to make him aware of that as well. That's all I have.
I'm gonna wanna go into a non-public under L.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so let's, any other business to come before the board? If not, then we're gonna seek a motion to go into non-public under,
91A:3, paragraph 2, section L, consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel.
One's a-
Is that your motion,
Yes.
Jim?
motion has been made,
Left.
I will second that.
Second period.
You're seconding?
Yes.
Okay,
So then, we're gonna need a
You
roll
ready?
call vote.
okay. Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah? Miss Lowe's, I'm assuming you're a yes, Dr. Farah. Miss
Yes, I'm
Lowe's?
sorry. Say no to him.
Mrs. Mockmer?
Yes.
Thank you.
No.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Your time is 9:36.
Do you wanna take the minutes?
Sweet.
So we'll take the
Yes.
minutes.
Sure.
Okay, let me give you a new thing then. You can't have mine.
Up one zip.